Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I really like saying this. Welcome to our special live edition Women in Tech and Diversity in All its Forums. My name is Anna, and I'm going to be your moderator today. A very warm welcome also to everyone who is joining us for the very first time. Let me take the next couple of minutes to give you a heads up of what we have prepared for you today. This event is a little bit different compared to the other live events run by WeAreDevelopers. It is a less technical one, but I truly believe that the topics we have chosen are of great importance to the tech community. We've organized it with the idea to honor all underrepresented groups in the tech industry. And today we are going to talk about how to navigate conferences as an introvert. We will also speak about the importance of the community in your career. There is going to be a nice discussion with a young professional in software development. And at the end of the day, we have organized a roundtable for you. We have invited people, software engineers with different backgrounds, who will talk truth about diversity, inclusion, and belonging. I truly believe that it's going to be an interesting one. Before we start, there are two raffles that are running currently. You just need to scroll down and to find them. One is from our partner Codacy, and there is another one for us. Just participate. We are raffling out five tickets for the WeAreDevelopers Congress in Berlin in July. And the only thing you have to do is to finish the question. The question is around diversity, of course. It is related to our topic. And before we start, one more thing to remind you, as always, be respectful, be nice with each other. It is very important for your developers that everyone from the community feels welcome and respected. We should now get going. We will start with a great speaker. She doesn't really need an introduction, but I will still say a few words about her. Brenda Romero is an award-winning game designer. She is a writer, women advocate. She entered the gaming industry in 1981, and she is one of our regular speakers during the event in Berlin. You will also see her this year. Unfortunately, today, due to personal schedules, she will not be able to be with us in person, but she took her time to pre-record her session as she really wanted to be part of the session. I'm sure that we will miss the chat at the end, but I'm also pretty sure that we will not miss her wisdom and her passion about the topic. So happy listening.
Hey, we are developers. Happy International Women's Day. My name is Brenda Romero, and this is my talk, Hidden Histories. I'm going to tell you 5 stories. For me, these were stories of discovery and something that fundamentally changed how I see the role of tech and women in this industry. When we're talking about the history of women in tech, we often bring out what I refer to as the usual suspects. So there's Ada Lovelace, of course, who invented the idea of programming in 1843. She's really the first programmer. And Grace Hopper, who invented COBOL, but that wasn't enough. She's a rear admiral. She's an absolutely amazing person. She also invented the compiler in 1952, and she found the first computer bug, literally. There it is, the moth that was in Relay F, Relay 70 Panel F. And then there's Hedy Lamarr, who created Wi-Fi. And each of these women is absolutely worthy of celebration, and their contributions to code and tech cannot be understated. But I often find in articles about tech that are attempting to be inclusive, it's the same 1, 2, or 3 women that are mentioned as if that's all there were. Whereas I think if we talk about key men figures in technology, we could fill this and several more pages. And before I jump into my next story, I want to say that usual suspects are important, critically important, because they form the stereotypes of what we see in our head, what everyone sees in their heads when they think about what a person or a job is. And they shape the opinions of what people want to become. So, who's a surgeon and who's a teacher? What's a nurse? And who is a CEO? Or who's a lead programmer? And I know that this actually affects people because while my house is pretty tech savvy, there was a conference, well, it was an event for kids, a programming event where kids were showing off these games that they'd created. And I wanted to take my daughter, and she was like, I don't want to go. It's just going to be all boys. And in her head, this is what the event looked like. And the reality was, it was actually a really diverse event. There were loads of people there from all kinds of different cross sections. But somehow she got it in her head that IT was for boys and that that is all that was going to be in there. So, usual suspects is what people know, and people make career decisions based on these things. My next story is impetus. So this is me here, and I'll give you a bit of background. I got my start in tech when I was 5. That's when I first started making games. And I think we need to put tech in like air quotes there because I don't have a computer anywhere near me at the age of 5. But my mother, I come from a low income background, and my mother would take me to yard sales or garage sales or flea markets, and she'd give me a dime. And with that dime, I could get anything I wanted, except it's a dime, so I can only get so much, right? But what I could get is board games that were missing some of their pieces, and I didn't care, so I collected them and I got all the pieces together and I got the boards and I'd flip the boards over and I'd start making my own games. And that's really where things took off. And then also at a flea market, she got me the original D&D, which I still have. It is impossible to understate the effect that D&D had on me. I could create worlds. I no longer needed to go outside. And I think that's why I was so blown away by Stranger Things. Like, I was that awkward, unpopular kid, and all those kids felt like me, and they were going on adventures that I wanted to go on. When I was 14, I upgraded to another system called Rollmaster, and I didn't like its rules for encumbrance, how basically how much you're carrying affected how fast you could move. And so I decided naively to rewrite them. Now, these are obviously not the actual rules for encumbrance, but that's what they felt like to me. And so when I rewrote those rules, I ended up having to rewrite a whole ton of different rules. And we actually played it for several years. We called it Brenda Law. I don't have it anymore, so I get to remember it is an amazing system. I'm positive it was I'm positive it was probably actually garbage, but nonetheless, I have fond memories of it, and it was my first experience modding an existing system. Now, fast forward to 1981. This is a weird picture, but fast forward to 1981. I grew up in northern New York, and it was under snow, I feel like 11 months of the year. And I also had a terrible habit of smoking, and I wouldn't advocate smoking for any reason, let alone getting into tech. But I was in the bathroom at the time because that's where we would smoke, and another young woman was in there looking for a cigarette, and so I gave her one. And she started a conversation. Had I ever heard of Surtech? I hadn't. Had I ever heard of Wizardry? I'd also not heard of that. Had I ever heard of D&D? And you already know the answer to that question. And that's how I got my job in the game industry. I started working for Surtech Software when I was 15 years old. The first project I worked on was Wizardry, Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord. You can see it here. It was state of the art in 1981. And my mom was super proud of me that I got my job at Surtech. I also met my first husband there. No, actually, I started I started on the Apple II computer. Again, this is 1981. We didn't have much money, so for me, this was an amazing opportunity. I got access to tech I would never have had access to otherwise. I also fell headfirst into technology and I learned to code. And if I had to do anything 2 times, man, I would code it. For me, coding was more creative than Legos. It was more creative than my game pieces. I could build anything with it. And I convinced my high school to actually offer a programming class, which I unbelievably ended up leaving after a year and a half because I got a gig in the game industry. And during that time, we released a lot of games, and I actually put myself through college working on games and in technology. And during this time, I never saw myself as a woman in a man's world, and because Surtec, in fact, was mostly women. I joined the company right after this photo was taken, and you can see it was parody, and I had a great run there, 20 years. And so fast forward a ways, and I'm still making games, but I've decided to teach at a university. And so the university kicked off a diversity initiative, and this wasn't just like for gender identity and expression. It was for all kinds of diversity, neurodiversity, age, LGBTQI, queer folks, and I really was super excited about this. I was super excited to see what we could do to improve the diversity of the STEM cohort. And specifically, I really was interested in getting more, increasing the diversity of computer science students. But one thing that kept coming back to me again and again and again was that I would hear people say that women just aren't interested in tech, or that IT was really for boys. And I sort of felt like this is what this meme was created for. Like, what do you mean? That doesn't make any sense. But I would hear it regularly, and so I knew it wasn't I knew it wasn't correct. So I decided to actually, I wanted some like statistics. I wanted some material that I can come back and go like, no, man, we created this party and we invited everybody else to it. And so this is the next story. I went on an archaeological expedition. What you're looking at here are the first computers. In fact, this is what this job was called, and women were the first computers. Programming jobs were advertised to women specifically because they required, quote, menial, detail-oriented labor. And at the time, people deemed women were a perfect fit for this. Up until the 1970s, IBM in the UK actually measured code in girl hours, and I'm finding lots of evidence that at one point in time, in places here and there, women were definitely not the minority, and in some cases were the overwhelming majority. It was deemed that the labor perfectly suited women, that it was menial and detail oriented. And clearly, these are not my words, but something to think about is men often created the hardware. They would build the typewriters. And you think about the vision of the 1950s, 1960s secretary, who is that? Well, it's traditionally a woman in that role. And so men made the hardware and women used that hardware, except to use these computers, they had to code. And there's an amazing case in Dundee, Scotland. So you might be familiar with the ZX Spectrum. A lot of us got our start on that computer. That computer was largely built by women. And when they had the anniversary, they were celebrating a big anniversary of the ZX Spectrum, and those women were not even originally set to be featured as part of that. Now, when word got out, a number of academics started to champion their cause, and they were celebrated as they should have been. It was the same thing at Cray Computer. Women built a lot of these computers, and to make these computers work, they were coding. So for me, I actually started with 6502 assembly language on the Apple II computer, and that's what you're looking at here. And I don't remember being the only woman in my college class. I mean, I wasn't. There were loads of women. In the 1960s, so I go to college in the 80s, but in the late 1960s and 1970s, it was really taking off, this field, and it was targeted at women. We can even see a trainee gets 8,000 a year, a girl senior systems analyst gets 20,000 and up. And I mean, we could talk about easily, we could talk about how ridiculous that language is. Um, but really, like, this is taking off and it's being targeted at women. So as the importance of computing increases, the pay increases because they need more people to fill these roles. And as the pay increases, so do the number of men entering the field. And I'm not saying this is necessarily a wrong or a bad thing. I mean, the reality is it was the culture at the time. Men were the traditional breadwinners, and where there were higher paying jobs, they were going to go. In fact, in some countries, including the one I live in, if you were married at that time in the late 60s and 70s, you actually couldn't work. So culturally, this makes sense. At the time, it doesn't make sense anymore. And so when it was men and were entering the field, they weren't necessarily like, yeah, I'm your new manager. No, you're not. And so lots of women were shown the door. Now, to anyone listening to this, this is quite obviously ridiculous. But I think it's useful to take a look at the culture of the time. We really were ready for a woman-led tech revolution, but society was not. So let's take a look at some of the advertisements from this time. Here's a computer. It's a wife. It's not a computer. Here's an oven. And you can see here it's a wife saver. Now let's take a look at a Weinberg shoes ad. Keep her where she belongs. Like, excuse me. This is from 1974. There's an ad for trousers from Legs in 1970. It's nice to have a girl around the house and stand on her head, apparently. Another one from Chase and Sanborn Coffee in 1970. If your husband ever finds out you're not store testing for fresher coffee, apparently you're going to get a spanking. These are obviously absolutely ridiculous. And if you Google misogynist ads from the 1960s and 70s, you can see I'm not cherry picking. There are many, many of such ads. And the reality is, as I've said, we are on the verge of a woman-led tech revolution, but our culture wasn't ready for it. So I think the period that we're in now may actually just be an aberration. And if you want loads more information on this, there's a book called Programmed Inequality. Many of the programming jobs in Britain were civil service jobs, and so they have there's excellent resources for them um, to research and document all of this. My next story is the unicorn anomaly. People often view women coders as a bit of an anomaly, so much so that there's even a term that sounds kind of normal if you've been in the industry, except it's pretty weird. And I get asked questions like, what's it like to be a woman programmer? Or what's it like to be a woman game designer? Or what's it like to be a woman in tech? As if there's one answer to that question, right? Like, when I think about it, if I decided, no, I'll answer it on behalf of everybody, people would be like, Brenda, chill out. Like, there's many different answers. And I've heard loads of different answers myself. For instance, I was on a panel with Amy Hennig, who's a rock star game developer. She worked on Jack and Daxter in the Uncharted series. She's a powerhouse. And if you ask her, she's had a really great career. And then on the other hand, I've heard stories from some women that are so incredibly unpleasant, and women who've actually left the industry because of the things that they have experienced. So it's a wide variety out there. I myself have had a largely great experience. There was one incident where I was having a conversation. It was a completely professional conversation, and we were at a conference in San Francisco. And so there's this developer I admired. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm talking to this guy. He made some games that I really, really respected. And so we were probably talking for half an hour, and he moved his coat over. And there was an erection. And then he asked me if I wanted to do something about it. Like, excuse me? I was surprised. I was offended. I was also scared of the oddity of the situation. We were in a public place, so I wasn't worried about my safety physically. Like his games at the time were interesting to me, but I don't see them the same anymore. This is probably the dirtiest undirty slide ever. And so I didn't do anything, obviously. I was 100% all in. My life in screen, behind a screen, had never prepared me for a moment like this. And so I was just, how the hell do I get out of this situation? And so I did. And, as we're walking back through the conference, I just felt like, telling people around me, like, back away from this guy, like, oh God, it was such an awkward situation. And I get asked other questions like, what would you say to other women who wanted to be in tech? Or would you join our panel on women in games? Or would you be your diversity speaker? And then there's the statements that need to be debunked, right? Like, it all started becoming so much more about my gender expression and identity and much less about my actual work. And it's not just me this happens to, it happens to anybody who's perceived as an other. And, perhaps one of the most absurd cases to me was with Amal Clooney. So she's an international human rights lawyer. And while she was at the European Court of Human Rights to challenge the appeal of genocide, of 1.5 million people, she was asked by a reporter, unbelievably, who she was wearing. I mean, come on, right? Like, this is a woman changing the world. And, like, the actual question to ask is, what can we do to change the world too? something similar happened. Here she is. She's at the United Nations talking about ISIS, and Time magazine focuses on, of all things, her baby bump. I mean, really, seriously. And while I applaud all these necessary efforts to diversify companies and conferences and events and things like International Women's Day, it would be fantastic if these individuals were invited to talk about their work at mainstream conferences and not just their gender, their sexuality, their gender expression, or the color of their skin, unless that's like actually the topic of the conference. And it's not to say that it's not important, it is, but we are more than these things. And so one year I was asked to write an article on women in tech, and so I asked, can I can I write anything I want? And they said, sure, you can. So I decided to write an article called "Women in Games, Who Cares?" And I asked a bunch of colleagues a simple question, and the answers got interesting. So the questions were these: what's it like to be a male game designer? And the answers I got were, what? That doesn't make any sense, Brenda. Wow, that's a pretty niche topic there. So I doubled down. What advice do you have for men looking to break into tech? Wait, you're actually being serious. Is this a joke? So, just as a spoiler alert, my gender expression and identity has never once made a game or a technical decision. I never said I want to grow up and code as a woman. I never said I want to play games as a woman. In fact, I don't even know that I have any gender-based goals. And that's not to say that I'm not grateful. I am. It's an honor it's an honor that people are paying that they're even asking these questions, right? Like, but and I can also see how useful it is and how much it matters, right? Like I understand the need for role models. We want to look toward our goal and see someone like us. So this is a blurry picture of my husband with a guy dressed as a hot dog, and I wished I knew his name. I wished I knew his name and why he's dressed as a hot dog. But we were at QuakeCon, and my husband worked on a game called Quake. So there we are at QuakeCon, and this guy really wanted to meet John, and he kept like stepping back. And eventually, I said, "Well, are you a fan of the game?" And he said, "I am, but that's not it." He said, basically, when I was growing up, he's my hero not because of the games he made, but because he made them as a Mexican, and I could see how much it meant to him. And I have to say that when I look up to people like Danny Berry or any of the other women that I've already mentioned, I feel the same way. I feel the same way. And we all need role models and their stories to inspire us in real life, in movies, books, technology, art. And that's why it's so critically important that we not forget the critical role of women in this industry and that we highlight those roles and don't comment women out. Margaret Hamilton is one of my favorites. She was the director of software engineering at MIT, and she literally wrote the code that put men on the moon for the Apollo space program. She's standing next to that code there. And she did this while being a mom, and she did this while bringing her little girl into the lab. Like she's the perfect role model for me. Like she put men on the moon while taking care of the next generation. Like I have 4 kids, and I totally get it. I was there. There's also Lois Mitchell. So Lois is one of her work was instrumental to Fortran. And sometimes people say to me, yeah, but did women like actually do anything like hardcore? Like, I don't even know what that means, but I've heard that question. And I think like, well, how about Frances Allen? She wrote the optimizing compiler, and for that, she won the Turing Award, and that's pretty hardcore. There's also Katerina Yashchenko. She created pointers in 1955 with the development of the address programming language. Now, her work, she's Ukrainian, and so Ukraine at that time was part of the Soviet Union, and so her work is largely not known outside of the Soviet Union. But eventually, in 1964, Harold Lawson did the same, and he got the Computer Pioneer Award for this. But I think it's important to remember Katerina as well. There was Kathleen Booth, who created the first assembly language and designed the assembler. And there was also Melba Roy. She was NASA's computer. Um, there's also Sister Mary Kenneth. I don't know why that's funny. Anyway, Sister Mary Kenneth Keller, her work was instrumental to BASIC. and the language that so many programmers, including me, started with. There was Kay McNulty. So yeah, I live in Ireland, and Kay McNulty was one of the five all-female programmers on the ENIAC computer, and it was like I said, it was an all-woman coding team. So there they are. And much like the women who worked on the ZX Spectrum, they were also sort of forgotten from history. Some people actually thought they were models, right? No, like these are hardcore coders who changed the world. There's also Alexandra Forsythe. She was a co-founder of Stanford's computer science program, and she wrote the first textbook. Funny enough, well, it's actually not funny at all, but she and her husband George, who was her other co-founder of that program, they were both accepted in the PhD program at mathematics at Brown University. She was an exceptional student, but she was unable to continue her program because the dean did not approve of female mathematicians and cut her support. So such challenges weren't uncommon for women of the time. So where you see women excelling, man, know that they had to fight to get there. There's also Donna Bailey closer to home in my industry. Donna Bailey, who is the coder for Centipede, or Roberta Williams, who was the co-founder of Sierra and really gives rise to a long line of adventure games. There's computer programmer Carol Shaw of Activision. She created River Raid in 1978. She was the first woman to program and design a video game. There's Mabel Addis, who created the Sumerian game. So this is way, way early. This is 1962, and actually, Mabel is getting a Lifetime Achievement Award in at GDC in 2023. So the point I'm trying to make is we've always been here, and percentage-wise, there had to have been many of us. When I look back at, where women are in computer science, when I was going to school, it was 37%, and now it's closer to 18%. So, my next story is about the viewing room. There are literally millions of women in technology. We are half the population, but yet we're less than a third of tech workers. And of those tech workers, only a fifth of us are in leadership positions. And that means the influence of women on product development and company strategy is obviously not what we would hope. So this ends up having, non-trivial results to our health, our well-being, our education, our enjoyment, and our success. So I'll start light. So this is the original Xbox controller. It was originally named Fatty and then the Duke in all territories except Japan. And here's a picture of it in a man's hands, and here's what it looked like and felt like in mine. For many gamers, particularly women and children, this controller was just too large. And so it was given the Blunder of the Year award, and eventually the Japanese controller was released worldwide. Another thing that recently happened, so in June 3rd of 2019, Apple added cycle tracking, and it tracks menstrual cycles and fertility. And what's interesting about this is 5 years before that, they introduced the whole health kit. Like there are 2 billion people in this age group, and why are they just thinking of it? Like what took 5 years? Even Disney talked about menstruation in 1946. I mean, it's a thing. It's a normal thing. Incidentally, this was also the first 1946 with Disney was the first documented use of the word vagina in a film. If you're ever needing trivia, so and then we also see it show up in AI, like if gender is equal to F, then all kinds of things happen. So you may have heard of Amazon's recruitment engine. So Amazon is amazing at automating almost anything. And so they trained their AI using resumes that they'd received for 10 years. And the problem was that most of these resumes were from men. And so sources revealed that the program penalized resumes with women in search terms like Women's Chess Club or who went to all female colleges because, not because they thought those were bad, but because they had hired fewer people from those. And so if you had like Smith College, you would it would not show up as high in the search results as others. And so even when they made the AI neutral for these terms, it was impossible to say that the bias didn't remain. And so that program got the axe in 2018. In 2017, a group of academics decided to review bias in open source computing. And so they found that women's contributions were actually rated higher and accepted more often than men, unless their gender was known, and then it dropped by 20%. So the point I'm getting at is it's endemic, it's scary, it's disheartening, it's wrong, it's bullshit, but it's also engineered. And if it's engineered, that means it can be changed. And as women have gradually been pushed out of computing, it's sort of become a men's field. And people will say things like, I guess women just aren't interested in code, except that's not true. Women are interested in code. And I believe it was a temporary aberration that was engineered. And I think we can reach parity. So, how? Well, I think we need to clear away the myths so that young women stop hearing things like girls aren't good at math and IT, because girls are good at math and IT unless they're told that they're not. And this is true of all genders, by the way. They will stop. If people are told that they're not good at something, they will start believing it. And we also need to extend this message to parents because their opinions matter massively. Science Foundation Ireland did a study that found that the largest influencer of a child's career choice is their mother more than anything else. So it must change. As women, we were the original computers. We created code. We created programming language. We built machines. We put a man on the moon and uh, just because, to be a bit cheeky, a woman built the man who went on the moon too. Now, this is about diversity. It's not about exclusion. It's about getting to equal because diverse teams are better in work and education. It's about clearing away the barriers about whatever is keeping people from getting into those seats. It's also the business case for companies. We need more and more people. And while, this might look like a great picture, the reality is that our industry is growing and we need more bodies, any skilled bodies. And it becomes more important than ever to address the systemic problems. If companies don't address what's keeping these chairs empty, they risk falling behind. And we also need to change the marketing. Like I decided at one point to get back into C programming. And so I wanted a programming tutorial to advance my knowledge. And so this is the very first thing, and I see like I'm a man and I'm white and I'm old. And I think like, what if when I'm trying to introduce my daughters to this, like what if we had somebody like Margaret Hamilton there instead, right? Like, that sort of stuff matters. And the most ridiculous campaign that I've seen, there was a campaign that was done by a company in 2011, and they were looking for programmers, and so this is their one of the pictures they put out. So they would offer a custom-made tuxedo. They would offer Sex Panther cologne. They would offer beard grooming oil, which I didn't want. And they also offered 10,000 wrapped in bacon. I'm a vegetarian, but I'll take your money. But like this doesn't make this whole campaign does not make me feel particularly welcome in that company. So it's critical that we change the message. Sometimes I think about having a message where, girls receive messages to counter what they normally hear, like summer camp for exceptional coders, and that girls are natural coders, and IT is for girls, and like it's just all over the place, not just to hammer it home because like it's actually true. Like it really is true. Women are natural coders. I remember growing up, a teacher told me that I'd never amount to anything. And I was told that I would live in the worst part of town. I was told that I had no chance of getting into a college of my choice. And I was told not to make the games that ended up being part of the reason that I won a BAFTA award. But I've always been a fighter. I wrote 3 books and I made those games and I got into college and I live in Galway, which is a long, long way from where I thought I'd end up. And I'm grateful for my life and I'm grateful I didn't listen, but I'm not always a fighter. And I may not always believe I may believe the things that I hear. And I wonder how many girls we've lost to those messages. Game dev is for everyone, and tech is for everyone. My hope is that we can open the door to everybody who wants in. When they're school kids, they look up to people that are like them who are entry level. They look up to lead coders and they see CTOs and TDs who are the very embodiment of who they want to be. They see themselves in the people ahead of them. And so when we see pictures like this, we don't think like, oh my goodness, it's some women coding. We just think, yeah, there they are. That's who we are. That's what our industry is. So happy Women's Day, everybody. I hope you have a great day. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Brenda. It was really a great reminder to all of us. And I would like also to remind to our audience that you will be able to see Brenda in person during the WeAreDevelopers World Congress in Berlin in July, at the end of July. Make sure that you book your tickets. I would like also to thank the audience about the compliments related to our studio. For those like me who are not really gifted about colors, it is pink, but I've been told that the real color of this couch is magenta. Anyways, I'm very thankful to our VP of Events, Gary Schneider, who brought it here, and I would like to use it as a great reminder that pink is not only for girls. Now we will have 5 minutes break before we introduce our next speaker. Welcome back, everyone. We are now onboarding our next speaker, but before she joins us, I would like to remind you about the chat option. Please use this opportunity so that we can engage more with you. And we are now waiting for Ramona Schwering to join us. If she's ready, maybe we can. Okay. Hello. Hi, Ramona.
Hello, feels good to be back.
I'm very happy to have you. Welcome, Ramona. So, for our audience, Ramona is a software engineer at Shopware. She started her career as quality assurance, and then she moved into software development. What else do we need to know about you, Ramona?
Well, I guess it's the most important thing. I love to go to conferences, and I like to do it because I'm a bit. I hope that doesn't sound right, but a bit stubborn, and I want to let all the guys and girls and people know that we as women can go to conferences. We have something to say, and yeah, I guess it's worth leaving the comfort zone for this, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, crowds and strangers. I love this. By the way, how did you end up with the topic?
Well, I like to find people who join me on conferences, and I always feel like, okay, I'm a bit scared to go there because, yeah, all those people who know more than I do, apparently in your head or in my head, or yeah, imposter syndrome. Maybe you heard about it, and I can completely feel this because I may not look like it, but I'm actually an introvert person. But I do think that it's like a wasted opportunity and can be so much fun to go to conferences, not only because of the connection, but also of everything you learn. So I think I found a good way on how to have fun with conferences, even though I'm an introvert, and actually to notice that it's nothing contradicting each other. So, well, I hope that I can invite people to go more to conferences and maybe meet there.
Since it's quite common, reminds me when we were kids and our parents were telling us, don't speak to strangers. And then we grow up and we go to conferences and we keep on not speaking to strangers. Since it's a
Yeah.
common, it's a common issue. Okay, Ramona, so the stage is yours. I don't want to waste more time. Just whenever you're ready, you can share your hints with us.
Yeah, I guess I'm ready when you are. Okay, yeah. So, again, welcome everyone. I'm so glad to at least imaginary see you here, even though I cannot see the chat or something, but I know you're there, and that feels so great to be back and to be with you and to talk about a topic which is really close to my heart, especially here at this Women in Tech Day, because I hope that I can invite you to go more to conferences and to feel that we are there and not to be alone and stuff. And especially, I'm really glad to be here at WeAreDevelopers again because I actually started to be a speaker there kind of early. Like, I guess it was the JavaScript Congress in 2021 where I gave my first talk here. So they basically guided my speaker's journey a bit. So I'm really proud to be here. Okay, I'm a woman and I'm a woman who goes to conferences. And there are so many advantages to do this. And it's not only the perk of short bathroom crews. There's much more to it. But I don't want to spoil you now. Let's start real quick with this one. My name is Ramona. I'm working as a software engineer at Shopware AG. And I'm usually talking about front-end development and especially testing, but not today. Today I want to talk about conferences, how to manage to love them, and basically how I came here and give a talk, even as an introvert, right? So if you see me today, or if you Google me, see a female speaker who visits conferences or, yeah, basically contributes to live screens, podcasts, and stuff like this. And so many people wonder, like, okay, you don't look like an introvert, right? Well, I don't think that's in contra introduction or whatever I like to call it in English. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm actually quite introvert, and if you know the Myers-Briggs type indicator, I'm an INFP, so a mediator type. So I may look extrovert in some occasions. Well, but before I dive into how I grew to love conferences, I want to start with a really small but important disclaimer. I'm not a subject matter expert. I had some years of psychology and some psychology classes, but I'm still a software engineer, and this is kind of my experience and how I came to love conferences and get over the fear of crowds and people. So yours might be different. I'd love to talk with you after the session, or maybe peek a little bit into the chat later on and find some more of your experiences. But, well, I hope maybe even if I'm not a subject matter expert, I can still be useful and helpful to you. Okay, well, I think we start with the situation and give it a definition on the words this session is dealing with. So we're on the same page and we have the same images in our minds and stuff. So, well, it's common knowledge that extrovert people derive their energy from being around people, which makes it a quite outward attitude. Maybe partying, being around friends, on concerts, basically anything involving people and maybe even stranger people. On the other side, introverts renew their energy from spending time alone, which can be considered an inward attitude. But don't jump into conclusions. There are some prejudices and misunderstandings we need to get away, because introverts are not necessarily shy. We don't necessarily look ourselves inside of a room and always read the time and are really afraid of people. We do like having conversations or having our friends around us. Susan Cain, who is an author of the book called Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking, phrases is really great. So introverts just need less stimulation from the outside. They may dread small talk, but they enjoy deep talk and really deep and interesting conversation. And they still may have strong social skills and enjoy company, but they feel or they start to feel tired of gatherings or people after a while. So basically prefer to listening to speaking and stuff like this. And when you think about the world we are currently in, or a conference especially, you might notice that our society is overwhelmingly biased, not towards us introverts, but more to extroverts. For example, conferences, events are often designed for extroverts. And I guess that's just the nature of things when it comes to gatherings of larger people. And this is especially true for in-person events, which started like last year. I guess they got going a lot. So it was the default until COVID, and now it's coming back. And extrovert people are really scraping their feet to go there, but for us introvert people, it's difficult. Especially at conferences as an extrovert world on steroids. Imagine such an event, like at least for in-person ones. You have your slots where the talk is happening, and in between those slots, in between those rooms with the people where you listen to the speakers, you have the breaks. You can visit the booth, you can do networking, eat something, and in bigger breaks there's often a lunch or a dinner or any meal. And later on, there's an after-conference activity, which all comes back to the same thing. Lots of people who want to talk with you, who approach you, like speaking with strangers or being approached by strangers. And this is even encouraged because the organization of those conferences often plan experience and interaction for attendees with those evening parties where you are basically forced to get in such interactions, right? So how does such an event feel for an introvert? Imagine being drained by less time alone and more social interaction. So being drained by lots of people, lots of noises and impressions at the same time. So this situation feels overwhelming as you are not able to control your environment. You're not being able to find a place to recharge. And then there's the unboss. Networking, the people's idea of a hell, extroverts included sometimes actually. So it's small talk itself. And being forced to do activities like small talk you might feel uncomfortable with, like all those infamous icebreaker games you might have seen somewhere. And other people that talk forever without considering your needs. There's so much pressure, right? So much pressure to make the most of it and to meet as many new people as you can. And for example, for me, I know those draining feelings. After a conference, I really need some time to rest. And I experienced some phenomenon called introvert guilt, because I give myself so much pressure to make the most out of it. So I feel guilty to decline a social offer, or just say like I need a break, or say, okay, I will skip a session or something. And this might feel really, really bad. And don't mention public speaking, being the center of attention. Everyone listens to you, wait to throw questions at you at the Q&A. This can fill people with horror, and I've been there, and I needed time to get comfortable with it. And even today, to be honest with you, I'm so nervous, but I don't think that's a problem because it's normal, right? And now you could say a thing like, okay, in COVID times, we now learned to have remote conferences. Wouldn't that help introverts a little bit? So there are some neat little forms like Gather Town, bringing back the in-person experience. And by the way, I love this Pixel Pokemon style, right? And yeah, at least when it comes to my experience, I myself can handle remote even better, even if I missed the in-person ones. But, well, there are all those advantages like comfort of your own home, possibilities to retreat, and your place is not literally filled with people. But still, there's one point why remote doesn't always serve as a relief. Because you invite strangers into your safe zone, into your home through this little box called camera out there, where you speak into it. So there's a combination of less human feedback only through the screen and through the camera. And body language is really difficult in a virtual setting. Remember all those weird Zoom meetings, right? Speaking of Zoom fatigue is a thing. You can grow tired of watching videos too. And especially if it's like a Q&A session or a networking session virtually, introverts are often bypassed. And worst case, if there's a network feature called chat roulette or something, you might know the risks. So, okay, I complained a lot now, right? You might ask me now, why do I bother about conferences if they feel so draining and so scary to me? Why going to such event if you think this way? Well, as said in the beginning, conferences can be fun and instructive. You will gain lots of valuable learnings. You will meet lots of wonderful people who are basically like you. And the more often you go to conferences, the more people are known to you and you feel like being part of a community. Remember, introverts do like social interaction, and if you don't feel like the newbie in the last corner of the room, but they include you like right away, which I experienced last year at my first speaker in-person conference, it feels so great. And then you are able to talk with those people about things you are interested in and have deep conversations. In this way, even for introverts, conferences can feel wonderful. And in my opinion, this is everything but a contradiction. You don't need to go against your nature. You don't need to act like you're extrovert just to get value from conferences or other networking events. As you see in this quote by Oprah Winfrey, the greatest discovery of all time is that a person can change his future by merely changing their attitude. So I want to share my strategies to get there, to really have a wonderful time at conferences. And if you consider extrovert and you're watching me right now, those points can benefit you as well on how to approach and help introvert people at conferences to feel comfortable and to have really wonderful conversation with them. Okay, the first strategies I developed will aim at your mindset. And I know people say like, oh, it's not just a mindset thing. Well, it's true and wrong at the same way. So there are some things which are important to not forget. And this applies not only to conferences. I think they can be taken as good advice in other situations as well, for basically anything which requires you to leave your comfort zone in general. And the one and first point which you shouldn't forget is fairly easy, and it sounds a bit too simple, but it's true, because it's okay to be introvert. As said, even if the word is biased to extrovert people, it might feel wrong to not be an extrovert. It's completely okay to be the way you are. We spoke about introvert guilt as, for example, if I think about my school time, my personality of not going to parties and preferring, going to cinema with or having a movie night at my place with my friends, or even just reading a book was labeled a bad thing because I wasn't outgoing. And it was labeled as something I needed to change urgently. And I know today that is not the right path, right? Actually, none of the personality styles is better than the other. So it's important to embrace your own. You are wonderful the way you are. And when it comes to event, it wouldn't work out either way if you try to conform to some ideal which you have in your mind of what a conference attendee is supposed to be or supposed to do. You're good the way you are. And we already spoke about your good traits like having deep conversation, being a good listener, and being a wonderful person, which is wonderful to interact with. So why not embracing it? And another point which is good to take in mind is that actually research suggests that there are like 30 to 50% of all people considered introvert. There are different papers which I can put in the chat later on, but it always comes back to such an even number basically. And that sounds quite simple as well, but keep in mind you're not alone. And especially at those tech events, technology attracts introvert people, right? So that means if you go to a conference of a topic you like, that means that a lot of people will feel the same way. And if you approach them, they will most likely feel exactly as you do. And it's like pushing open doors. Oh, that was too fast. Sorry. A third and last thing to always keep in mind, which I actually like to use for my talks as well, is the sentence, you will be all right. You will be fine at the end of the day. It again sounds a bit too simple, but it helps me a lot to remember it because it doesn't matter what happens at the conference in the next hours. In the evening, you will be fine. You will have a good experience. You will have a wonderful meal. You have wonderful conversations. And what can happen on a neutral stance, right? You get a good time experience and you're fine. And when it comes to public speaking, it helps me to calm down myself, especially right before my talk, and to counter the stage fright and to get myself into focus. So I did that today as well. And I know that this evening I will be proud of myself and happy that I met you, even though it's only virtually, but who knows, maybe we can catch up. Well, even now, in this keynote, not keynote, but in my session here, I forgot a lot of things to say. Did some mistakes, and my English gives me still anxiety, but everyone does mistakes. And if I missed something important here in my speech, please, let's talk later. But I'll be fine. As said, I'll be fine. Even if I'm my biggest critic, Okay, so we covered mindset, right? What about the events itself? And most of the advices I gathered here are valid for both kind of events, like in-person and remote ones. And I guess this one is the most important thing. For many introverts, if they feel that like they've met somebody whose company they truly enjoy, they manage to land a topic of mutual interest in which they basically are able to have a conversation of ages. In this situation, they feel fine, right? Can you guys remember such a conversation or such a situation as well if you consider yourself introvert? So a situation you feel comfortable by speaking with another person or doing extrovert things like going to a party or a concert. Well, this situation is called relaxing into extroversion, and it's a term, I guess it was invented by Carl Jung, which is quite famous in psychology. And I was made aware of this term by my co-organizer. So I'm organizing some meetup events, only virtually at the moment. And my co-organizer, who looks like a really extroverted person at all, he said, like, I'm introvert, but I learned some behavior to feel comfortable in some extrovert situation. And then it made sense to me, right? So try to get into those situations. And there are a couple of ways on doing it. Like one might be finding a conference buddy who is happy to chat with you. In best case, find a new contact at the conference. You can, for example, use some icebreakers. Like I remember one conference some years ago, I guess it was in 2018 or 2017, where I went to a quality assurance engineering conference, and there was a person wearing a Big Bang Theory t-shirt. And I basically approached her and said, like, I like a t-shirt. And then we basically clicked, and it was my conference buddy for this conference, and it was wonderful. So, or if you cannot find some person you know, you could consider some stuff like being accompanied by someone you know. May it be a colleague, even though it's a bit easy mode because you know this person already. Or another idea is this little website I added. It's by Conference Buddy, which is a platform to help you find one of those conference buddies to accompany you at a conference. And I guess this is a wonderful situation to thank all of my colleagues or people I met at conference buddies, which basically made it really easy for me to get into this relaxing into extroversion situation and just feel great because I know I'm not alone. Before you start an event, and especially as a woman, this is important. Make sure to choose a conference where you are genuinely interested, of course, where many guests will have similar interest as you, and look for some hints for a good conference, for a welcoming and diverse one, apart from the topics. For example, many conferences have a welcoming code of conduct, which makes it easy to see which mindset they have and if it's a protected environment you're in. Another hint you could pick up is a diverse speakers lineup. So basically, this is one of my motivations on why I get to stages to begin with, because I want that people see me as a woman being a speaker at a conference, so they see I'm not alone. I belong there. I can go there because there are other women, you know? So look for a diverse speakers lineup, or ask conference organizers to invite more diverse speaker, and not only in gender, of course, also when it comes to heritage or however they read themselves. The more diverse, the better. And another point which I think I still need to cover, of course, we hate networking, but if we relax into extroversion, it might still be fun. So use small talk to your advantage and make the most of your personality, like being highly curious and a great love of learning. Ask interesting questions about the conference topic to people, especially if you are basically approaching people, but also when you consider yourself extrovert, to approach, interact people. I like, for example, to set me a little network strategy. So I set myself a goal number, basically a prescribed number of people who are kind of spirit, and I want to meet them. May it be a speaker, may it be someone where I know there's there, or a conference buddy, platform people, and then meet them. And if I reach this number, and may it be really low, like 3 or 4 people, I will take some time to recharge. So maybe going outside, listening to some music, just recharge. And the most important point, no one says you have to network if you don't want to. And I want to put a huge exclamation point to it, so skip this one if you need it. And as I already slightly talked about it, most people, introverts and extroverts included, need some time to recharge. And if you are at a conference during this event, be intentional about it. Be intentional about self-care, and use the places to just give up. If there's a silent area, for example, or some couches to sit down, a lounge area, or even skip out completely, especially if you're remote. It's not a big problem if you say like, okay, the next slot is not that important for me. I just take my time and I will be recharged if I come back. And if you, for example, use places to rest, or in general, if you see there's a sensory overload coming or something, take earplugs or at least headphones with you so they muffle sound, even if you just use earplugs and not using music. And together with places to rest, this can be wonderful and help you to stay in this relaxing into extroversion situation. And don't let FOMO fool you. Don't give into it. So you don't need to feel any introvert guilt when going out, because it's completely fine. If you need a break, take it. I really need to repeat this one over again because this point is really important. And for most conferences, may it be in-person, hybrid, or remote, they will be recording. So don't worry about taking a break. And to name another example, especially when it comes to public speaking, I usually go out for one slot before my live talk, especially when it comes to English ones. So I will skip the slot before mine, hear a podcast in my non-native language, English in most cases, or if I don't need to, or I'm using my native one, I use lo-fi or white noise language and music beforehand to calm myself down, recharge, and being spot on there when I need to. So yeah, back to my story. With this strategy, I successfully learned to leave my comfort zone, handle valuable talk with other attendees, and basically conferences to begin with. And I got wonderful experience out of it, even as an introvert. I met so many wonderful people, and thank you so much for being here. I learned a lot by those people, and of course by the talks, but especially by the hallway talks, how many people like to call those talks in between conference slots, basically. And I even became a speaker myself and managed that without forcing myself to become extrovert. And yeah, as I started my career at an unconference, for example, years ago, if you think about becoming a speaker and wanting to have a wonderful audience, which is welcoming and inclusive, and it's perfect to start. Try it at an unconference where your talk will be basically elected, and yeah, you can be really sure about the people there that they want to hear you, or use meetups. So there are wonderful ways of getting started. All right, if I can choose 4 points to remember of this session, it would be those 4. It's completely okay to be introvert, so please don't force yourself to be anything you don't want to be. You're good the way you are, and don't let anyone else convince you another way. Get into the situation of relaxing into extroversion, so a situation you feel comfortable with people, and a way to reach it, for example, is using small talk to your advantage. So talk about the things you are interested in and you want to have deep conversation on. And last but not least, allow yourself time to recharge. If you need a break, please take it and don't fall for fear of missing out. I can promise you, in the end, it will be okay. Even if you don't know what to say, even if you need a break sometimes, if you stay the way you are, everything's fine. So please don't fulfill the ideal in your head how you think a conference attendee should be. It's perfect the way you are. I hope I can meet you someday, remote or in person at a conference, and become your conference buddy, and we'll talk about your experiences and I can learn from you as well. And until then, please reach out to me here in the chat. I hope I can take a little peek later on. But I guess there will be a Q&A, so please reach out there. But you can find me on Twitter, Mastodon, or LinkedIn with the handle I put here on my slides. So please reach out. I would love to learn from you. And until then, thank you so much for listening. It was wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Oh, at the moment I can't hear you. I don't know. I guess maybe it's muted. It's default one. It happens to me all the time.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfectly fine.
Okay, good. Thank you, Romana, for the nice talk. I think that many people can relate to what you just said. I have one question to you, and actually, it's not a question, but okay, let's do both. Are you coming to the World Congress of Berlin? Because you just made a very nice offer to our community. You offered them to be their conference buddy, and I really liked it. So, are you coming to Berlin? And can you maybe just fulfill your offer there?
Oh, I'd love to
Joining us
actually.
there?
So I actually submitted some talks. So people, please cross your fingers for me. So hopefully I will be accepted, and if yes, I will be there especially. Yeah.
I am pretty sure, and I'm very confident that you will be accepted, Ramona, and we will be happy to to have it there. I don't know the outcome of the evaluation yet, but it will be really nice if you can join us. Did you? How did you learn all those things that you just shared with us? It was something new for me. This buddy conference platform that you mentioned, but all the other things. How did you learn about those?
Well, basically, when it comes to Conference Buddy, I stumbled upon it in Twitter, actually. So it's an open source project, and I like to attend the Oktoberfest. I don't know if you heard about it. It's like in October where you have like, I guess, 5 contributions you can do, and then you can choose if you want to have a t-shirt or plant a tree. There I basically stumbled upon this project, and I was like, oh my God, I needed this so much. So yeah, I basically looked at it, and sometimes I see people with those little buttons of conference buddies on conferences too. So did I have it here? I'm not completely sure, but you saw this little dog icon in my talk.
Yeah.
So if you see people with these buttons, you know that they are conference buddies. And yeah, I learned about it a little bit too late, actually, but yeah, it's a wonderful thing. And yeah, the other stuff is basically learning by doing in the most cases. I was a bit happy because I had a mentor when it comes to learning how to speak from one point in the past. So the first steps, I went to the small things like conferences and meetups, where the group is fairly small and a bit like a family. So that helped a lot. And as soon as you went to some meetups, you will get to learn more people, and you will meet them at conferences again and again, and then it will get gradually easier. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for this. And how do you basically educate yourself when it comes to coding, when it comes to anything? Can you tell us a little bit about your coding experience?
Well, my experience started fairly normal, so to say. Like there's a education way in Germany where you have like 50% of working experience and 50% college, and I did such a thing. But actually, the most thing I learned was using open source. And yeah, especially as a woman, it's sometimes a bit intimidating, especially as many people will give you feedback if you want them to or not. But the way you get feedback basically for free, which is wonderful. And maybe I'm a bit more motivated to write cleaner on or more prettier code because I know that people can look at it. And yeah, it's basically more or less learning by doing. So searching for little side projects, seeing if I can contribute to another open source project, and learning along the way. Yeah.
Like with the conferences, learning by doing.
Yeah, basically, yes. So at one point I was like, okay, I was really, really quiet, and I was like, okay, I can continue waiting for stuff to happen, but I don't need to expect that anything will help me then, right? So yeah, starting to get out of the comfort zone, even if it feels really scary, and it does, but you will have benefits from it.
There is a huge discussion now in the chat about how little women we have at the conferences, in the tech conferences, and also as speakers. And WeAreDevelopers is trying to always give the stage to women, and we encourage this. But what can the tech industry in general do better so that we can be more inclusive to women, and not only to women, to also other underrepresented groups?
Well, I'm not completely sure if you say like I want to have a certain percentage or something, but there are a couple of communities, meetups, or Twitter spaces where women are. You could ask them if they know people who are able to have a talk, or how to basically get supported on having a more inclusive area. Then another thing which I really think it's important is a code of conduct. So you have some guidelines you commit to, and where you are sure how to protect certain groups of people and minorities. I think this is really important. And then, maybe having events like this where you see that there are women to do it, and to encourage people to apply for conferences and stuff. So I think having events like this one are basically the best way to encourage
But I'll
people.
be really happy if we start doing this event not only on the 8th of March, but also outside of this special date. I think that it's really going to be helpful if we are more inclusive, not only on special occasions.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ramona.
I see some questions in the private chat here. Should I cover them too, or should I basically do it in Twitter if we don't have any time left?
Actually, I think that we have like how many minutes? We can go ahead. We can go ahead. Can you please cover them, Ramona? I was just about to encourage the audience to connect with you privately after but we still have a couple of minutes left, so you can go ahead.
Thank you. So the first is what to do before my talks to relax. You mentioned that you focus right before the talks, but how do you do it? Breathing, scratching, breathing. Yeah, actually, yes. There's some, I don't know how to phrase it in English, but your body prefers one way of breathing, like breathing in or breathing out. And depending on this, you can find some relaxation exercises. I guess it would be too much for this time now, and I don't know if I can explain it in English, but I will look for it and I will post it on Twitter or something. Maybe you can reach out there. Then, as an introvert, how hard do you think an interview is? Oof, yeah. Interviews are hard, especially if you are not completely prepared on what questions to expect. But for me, it's helpful to know, and this applies to interviews as same as Q&As, that the one who is interviewing you don't want you to fail, right? So the questions will be okay. And first and foremost, it's completely fine to say, I don't know, because the biggest or the most famous people do this too and say like, I'm answering it later on as well. So at least when it comes to these public interviews, like being in a podcast or being here in a Q&A session, that's completely fine.
Ramona, there is an interesting question. How was your first talk ever? It's in the chat. And also compared to now, how do you feel? How did you feel in the past compared to now?
I would lie if I say I'm not nervous. So, and it's really important to know that it's completely fine, because I think like nervousness or stage fright even is a form of energy you can basically utilize. But I'm more comfortable because I know that I will be fine in the end. So the only thing which could go wrong is the talk itself, and I have control about it, because I can rehearse it and before I can time proof it, I can give my best to make it work. And all the other things are being taken care of in the most part. So I know in comparison to before, I can be relaxed and I don't need to worry that much. And of course, the head does its thing. Sometimes it's still like, oh my God, I'm really nervous, especially when it comes to the large in-person events where you actually see your crowd. But yeah, I guess I grew more confident and I was able to be more confident when it comes to reacting to like some hiccups when it comes to my language, or if I have some smaller mistakes in it, I know it's fine. And this is calming me down a lot. So it's not that scary as you have it in your head beforehand. And another
How do you silence those voices in your head?
Well, it's this "you will be alright" term I keep inside of my head. And what is also really fascinating, actually, you just need to survive the first minutes. Afterwards, you are in autofocus. You don't see anything anymore.
That's a really good tip.
Yeah, so don't worry. Just practice maybe the introduction a little bit more often. And it's a part which is fairly easy because you know yourself, you know your experience, you know what to say. So maybe to put your introduction, who you are, in the front, and then you already survive the first minutes, and then it's autopilot.
How many talks did it take you to become the speaker that you are today?
A lot, and especially there's one interesting fact. So the point where I got a bit more professional when it comes to my talks was 2020. So I got into it a bit more professional, and then COVID hit. So it got virtually like at the spot. So the transition from smaller in-person talks to bigger ones was completely virtual. So even though I was experienced last year, my bigger slots, like the one in VJS Amsterdam in front of 2,000 people, was my second in-person one. So this was interesting, but I was like, okay, it's the same as virtual, because if you see the number of people joining, it's often a fairly similar number. You just don't see it like this. So yeah, it took me
I think that we lost Ramona. We will try to bring her back for the answer of this question, and also for a couple of more that are left in the chat, because we have still a few minutes. And you can...
I'm sorry.
No worries, that's the risk of all the live events, but I'm happy that you're back. So we didn't really hear the answer of your question. I think that you dropped off when you just said, so it took me...
I'm sorry, best cliffhanger. So like my router was basically losing energy, so I have no idea what that was, but maybe it was a cat like throwing up a cable or something. Okay, so well, I guess if you count the virtual experience in, it was like 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah.
It's interesting. Does the regularity of speaking also help, or is it something that is not that important?
You mean being virtual or in person, or?
No, what I mean is how often do you, if you stop talking for like a couple of months now, do you also have to kind of regain some of the skills or the confidence that, are you going to lose part of the confidence that you're currently having?
I have a feeling that it didn't happen. It feels like riding bicycles for me, actually. So I guess my biggest break was a winter one, so like 3 months or something. And it, of course, even helped me to regain a little bit of strength, because, of course, being a speaker is sometimes a bit exhausting, especially when it comes to traveling. But I don't think that the skills will go to waste, actually. So you will get back to it fairly easy.
Okay. Another question. Do you have a tip to get over the frights? If one feel like very nervous in the middle of a talk or don't know an answer to something, how do you handle a situation like that?
If I, for example, stumble upon my words, which could be such a situation where I get out of my autopilot, I like to take, for example, a little a little dip of water, for example, and it's completely fine to say, okay, let me quickly regain my thoughts, and then trying to begin your sentence once again. That's completely fine. So maybe getting some little break and then starting all over again, and then it will be okay. When it comes to not knowing an answer, as I said, I will say, okay, I don't know yet. Can I go back to you later? So that's completely fine. And as even more, having such public or related answers in Twitter is good, because it documents them for others as well, which is wonderful, that others could maybe learn something too. So be honest and don't stress out. Just trying it again or getting back to the people later is completely fine.
Which one do you like more, Ramona? Is it the talk itself or the Q&A session at the end?
This is an interesting question, because both has their own perks. I actually do think I like the Q&A session even more, because in best case, it can grow to a wonderful constructive discussion where I can learn a lot. So I like this interaction. Maybe this is one of the reasons why, for example, workshops are really fun, because you have the interaction from the get-go.
Interesting, and thank you. Do we have any other questions left in the chat? Ramona, if you also see something that I'm missing, let me know, or just jump in.
No, I guess it looks fine, I think.
Any final say from your end?
Thank you so much for having me, and to being able to give a little bit more visibility to women who are speakers and who are here in the technical area. I guess visibility is the most important thing we need. So I hope I could help my part, basically. And yeah, the best thing would be meeting you all in July, maybe at the World Congress, and then maybe I can be a conference buddy. That would be really great.
That would be really great. Thank you, Ramona, for all the insights and for being so honest and so authentic with our community. I'm really sure that giving back to the community is something that you're doing really great. Thank you very much. Thank you. And before we onboard our next speaker, I will announce a break of how many minutes do you think that we can give them? Like 10 minutes break. Okay, good. See you soon. Okay, welcome back. And we are now preparing for our next talk. Our next speaker is called Anna Yushchenko. She's a mobile development expert using Flutter and Dart. And she talks and blogs about cross platform development, contributes to OSS, and mentors talented tech women. I'm really happy to welcome you, Anna. If you're ready.
Hello.
Hi, Anna. How are you today?
Pretty good. How are you?
I am pretty good as well. Thank you. Thank you for asking. So, before we go into your talk, can you just tell us real quick what are we going to learn from you today?
Okay. I don't expect to deliver some, breakthrough new knowledge. I believe we all know that the powerful impact that environment we are immersing ourselves to can have on our lives. But still, we from time to time need a reminder about basic, simple things that are usually true in our life. So it will be a nice reminder about the power communities may have on us with the example of my personal story and what impact it had on me.
Okay, you got our full attention. So, whenever you're ready, you can start.
Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Anna, software developer, passionate about quality from Ukraine. That's how I typically speak of myself when I did an introduction and in the event like this one today. In addition, at different years throughout my career, I would add various details as to what my current professional focus was. We'll know how effective storytelling can take us further in our career and help us find and build relationships. So recently, I attended a workshop called Tell Your Story. And during this workshop, we were practicing how to tell our story of origin, meaning where we come from, what our career path looked like, and where we are now. And to facilitate this task, we were offered an interesting exercise. We had to take a pen and paper and draw a visual representation of our career path and mark a few milestones or pivotal moments we think made a significant impact. And based on this, we would later compose our story of origin. And here is how I visualized my career path. The results of this simple exercise gave me a lot of food for thought. For example, am I so ignorant that I don't notice my own failures? Or do I see them as growth points and thus this path is steadily going up? Is this a result of consistency and hard work, or I was just lucky at some points? I guess it's a bit of both. But I'm here today to talk about another reflection of mine. As you see, for major of my career path, I had a steady professional growth at medium pace. And that's what you kind of would expect when a person is consistently practicing the same skill for a significant time, right? When I first started software development in 2012, after getting my master's in computer science, I would introduce myself as a junior software developer. I had a small experience with some frameworks, and I was yet to decide what I will focus on. Working in the field and gaining some experience and also learning from my talented colleagues, 3 years later, I would call myself a strong developer with focus on creating cross-platform mobile applications. Continuing this journey, I kept working in supportive teams where I could grow and learn, and eventually, after another 3 years, I would introduce myself as a senior mobile developer. As you see, so far it sounded like a natural evolution of skills and knowledge. But then something happened here. Some external force caused a mindset shift, which led me to this point 3-4 years later, where I would now introduce myself as Google developer expert, speaker at international tech conferences, women tech makers ambassador, technical content author, open source contributor, and mentor. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. It was early 2020. I've been creating cross-platform mobile applications for almost 6 years using a framework called Xamarin. I've been also investigating another emerging framework called Flutter, and was already using it for side projects for almost a year. And that's when I decided to switch it to it full-time and has quit my current job. I naively planned to have a short break and then find a new position focused on this new technology. Little did I know back then that COVID was just about to hit and the hiring across the globe will be frozen. Yeah, but that's a story for another day. The point is that I have switched technologies. And on its own, such a change isn't expected to have these dramatic consequences, right? Of course, it changes the opportunities that are opening or closing, depending on the type of the technology. But after all, I was just changing the tool for the same type of task, creating cross-platform mobile applications. That what I didn't realize back then is I was also entering a new community. Flutter community is a pretty unique place. At early stage, when it was just shaping up, as was the framework itself, the founders' team were extremely intentional in building inclusive, respectful, and supportive community. As a result, it has always been a nice virtual space where you would feel welcomed and elevated. In addition, because the framework was young and there was not that many educational content, it was very popular to create video tutorials, release courses, written content, various tips and tricks bits, and talk at technical conferences, popularizing the framework and spreading the knowledge. Inevitably, I got infected by similar ideas. When looking at achievements of others, I would be genuinely happy for them, maybe a bit jealous. But even though I was surrounded by this supportive community where members would cheer each other and praise their successes and wanted to have similar results, it still felt almost impossible for myself to achieve the same. The thing is, as with technical industry in general, the majority of technical community members were men, and even though they formed the biggest part of this supportive environment, I simply didn't have role models to look up to. I would see their successes as good for them, they can do this, not I can do this, at least with a reasonable amount of effort. Until I joined a much smaller community called Flutteristas, which you see I'm wearing their swag right now. It's a community for women and non-binary folks interested in Flutter framework. There, I found myself surrounded by talented women of different backgrounds. I met junior developers whose struggles I knew because I once was a junior developer myself. And I also saw very clearly the value I could bring to them if I start mentoring and educational activities. And I also met senior developers with backgrounds and skills similar to mine, but who were much more advanced in their careers than I was. And when I looked closer at their achievements and the effort it took them, then I realized, wait a moment, I can do the same. Let me see if this will bring me similar results. So that was the point at which the mindset shift happened. Because I met successful women in tech, I could relate to myself, basically my role models. And I got to know their stories. I was able to start activities that brought me where I am now, like participating in mentorship programs, speaking at international tech conferences, and being very active in the community overall. One more important thing I got from that community was a safe space to practice and gain confidence and courage to speak to a broader audience. I'm a very shy person by nature, and I would oftentimes tell myself that my opinion doesn't matter. There are smarter people in the room to lead the discussion, and I would only speak up if I feel my input would add a real value. This community showed me that I have much more to say than I thought I had. And clearly, such self-doubt was a result of my own limiting beliefs, right? And these things are very hard to spot on your own. It either requires a high level of self-awareness, which not all of us are capable of at different points in our lives, or it requires someone else telling or rather showing and proving you the opposite. You know how it oftentimes is, you can be told all the wisdom in the world, but only when you see and feel it, that's when you actually start realizing its power and impact on you. And finally, I cannot talk about my career development without mentioning the impact of individual mentorship. I was very lucky to meet a person who would be passionate about mentoring aspiring developers early in my career. We worked together side by side for many years, even in different companies. And during this time, I would always get a professional advice, all kinds of support, and sometimes even slight push towards greater achievements. So these three levels of communities, the global international online community, the smaller community of women I could relate to, and the individual mentorship, together they formed an environment where the mindset shift I mentioned was just inevitable. Clearly, these achievements that came later were the result of my own effort, but their influence gave me the direction and the motivation to follow it. And that's how communities work in general, right? They create a sense of what's normal and kind of the default behavior among its members. Psychologists say that the results you have today is oftentimes the average of the results of your environment. And of course, it also depends on your personality type, external factors, but it's undeniable that we are daily influenced by people we listen to. And this influence can be used to your advantage. If you immerse yourself into the community of people that either have the same results that you want to have, or they're on their way and you can join them, it will be much easier to achieve what you want. This path from a developer to public speaker, educational content creator, and mentor is not necessarily what success would look like for you. This was only used as an example of a mindset shift that happened to me personally, thanks to the community I was surrounded by. But in general, this can be applied to any area of your life, not necessarily career or tech. If you want to get better at eating healthy, join groups that care about daily consumption and the quality of food. And if you have a friend who you think is particularly good at that, just have a lunch more often together. Or if, for example, you want to get into investment, maybe attend an event where you can be introduced to people who are experts in this field. If for now you don't immediately see an appropriate community around, you can still immerse yourself in the right ideas medium by subscribing to newsletters, taking online courses, watching inspirational videos on YouTube. Whatever might get you infected with the right ideas. Also, I have to admit, from my experience, the smaller community is, and the stronger are your bonds with community individuals, the greater impact they will have. It's clear that's not the only way to have great results. And similarly, just joining the community without active participation won't advance you much. But it's definitely something that will make the process simpler and sometimes even seamless. Because your environments have such a great impact on you, there is also something to be mindful of. Toxic and hostile environments, which diminish whatever your successes are, will only minimize your motivation and energy level. So you'd better leave them as soon as possible. Basically, a community of any size may have this great influence on the mindset. But I see value in joining medium-sized communities in particular. It's quite hard to provide some exact measure characteristics to what a medium-sized means, because it really depends on how comfortable it feels to you. But the main criteria to me is that you should be able to build relationships with community members and be active. Back when I joined Flutterista's community, it had about 100 members, and it felt pretty comfortable to me. Now it's over 200 people, and I guess it might be intimidating for some members to be out on the spotlight. So why I emphasize the medium-sized communities in particular? I believe when you really can build relationships with individuals, feel empathy, and relate yourself to the role models you meet there, it will have the maximum effect. By the way, having regular meetings will greatly help with building these kind of relationships. They don't have to be frequent, but consistency is more important. Of course, having offline meetings where people are more present is fantastic, but online meetings with cameras on can also contribute to getting to know each other better. In addition to meeting role models you can look up to, you can get a very practical help out of communities on the things like rehearsing the talk you're going to present to a broader audience, or maybe giving a feedback to written content you're about to publish, or brainstorm ideas for new topics. In addition, tech communities are oftentimes full of opportunities shared by its members. It can be job opportunities, opportunities for free education or getting scholarship, or links to educational resources. And of course, opportunities for collaboration. As a side bonus, you may even get the chance to practice English, which can be beneficial for non-native speakers like myself. Now I'd like to dedicate a few words to female communities in particular, because I believe they may have a special impact on women in tech. First of all, because they offer higher chances of meeting role models you can look up to. And maybe have the same thoughts as I had, like, oh, interesting, I can do the same. And also, I feel like these communities have a special atmosphere of empathy and support, which overall positively influences your confidence. As a result, when communicating inside the community, you may notice that you speak more confidently, not being hesitant as to whether you should express your thoughts, and are actually encouraged to do so. However, I would say in this sense, female communities should be seen as training ground. The end goal of joining them should not be to isolate from the diverse reality of tech world, but to gain confidence, to feel more comfortable when speaking up in front of the mixed audience. Having said that, I prepared a few suggestions about community for women in tech that are worth checking out. I have to admit, those communities are very big, with thousands of members across the globe. So it's not the exact match for the medium-sized communities I was advocating for. But this you will have to look on your own. And as for global communities, after all, you will always be able to form smaller subgroups to create this cozy atmosphere. So the first community I recommend checking out is Women Tech Makers. This program is led by Google, and its goal is to empower women in their careers by providing access to curated resources and events, as well as information and tools. You can apply to join as a member, which will give you access to the Slack group, where all the collaboration happens, a newsletter, useful workshops and events. And if you already have some technical community contributions, whether you were organizing events or participating as a speaker, you can apply to become a Women Tech Makers ambassador, which will give you the recognition from the program and also access to the Ambassadors Academy with tons and tons of useful content. The workshop I mentioned in the beginning about telling your story of origin, it was organized by this program, Women Tech Makers, exclusively for ambassadors. And by the way, every year during the months of April and March, this community holds their largest annual event campaign to celebrate women in tech, create connections, educate, and inspire the tech community. So next 2 months will be packed with themed events across the globe and online. Be sure to check the event map and join. And another community I'd like to mention is Women in Tech. They are on the ambitious mission to unite 100,000 of women in tech to foster innovation with purpose and impact. There are many ways you can participate in this community. They offer access to useful resources, newsletter, events, and job board. And they also run an annual Women in Tech Global Online Conference, typically late spring, early summer, where you get to attend a ton of useful and inspirational talks. Additionally, don't forget about the power of individual mentorship. Both these communities have mentorship programs, which you can read more about at their websites. Just Google Women Tech Makers or Women in Tech, and you won't miss them. And also, if you have interest in Flutter and identify as women or non-binary, we'd love to welcome you in our Flutteristas community. You can find the application form on our website. Once again, just Google Flutteristas. So this was my story, how joining the right community changed my mindset and empowered me to reach the next professional level, from being a good software developer to becoming a frequent speaker at tech conferences, mentor, and role model for a younger generation of women in tech. Most likely you already knew what powerful impact our environment can have on us. But even then, once again, I hope it was a nice reminder about simple things that form our lives. And I hope this story was inspirational and educational. Thanks for your time that you spent with me today.
I'm always muted after the talks, I don't know why. But thank you, Anna, for the interesting talk. It was very interesting and new to me to hear the way you perceive the communities as a sandbox, as a safe place for the people to grow and to gain confidence. Can you say a few more words about it?
Of course. Actually, it was a surprise to me as well after I reflected on my career journey and saw this shift that happened and analyzed what actually happened during this time. And before, I wouldn't even recognize myself the power the communities can have on us. It's only, as I said, it's only when you really feel and see the results of this influence you start to realize. And I'm hoping that by sharing this today, I maybe showed this power to someone who didn't have yet a chance to experience it, but will start looking for it more actively.
I'm sure you did. You talked about role models. Can everyone be a role model?
Absolutely. I mean, we have different contexts in our lives, right? We have some role in our career, at home, in the society. And depending on what your strong sides are, or how you were overcoming some problem, or if you found something inspirational in your life, sharing information about this may make you a role model for someone else who has been going through the same struggles or is looking for a switch in their life.
Yeah, and those mentorship programs that apparently are something that is really helpful and needed when it comes to women in the tech industry. Can you tell me, can everyone become a mentor? And is it easy for young women to find a mentor as part of those like communities? Or what is it needed for one to become a mentor? And when is the right time to start mentoring instead of being mentored?
So first of all, I'm glad to see there are more and more mentorship programs for women in tech lately. It might be that it's my focus that I started noticing them recently, and I wasn't very well aware of them before. As for these programs, you can check their websites. I guess Women in Tech have ongoing mentorship program, and Women Tech Makers have defined time slots once or several times a year where they would open the academy. And as for mentoring, surprisingly to me, maybe to someone else as well, you can be a mentor earlier than you think you can. Because when thinking about this process, you would imagine you need to be an expert in everything, deeply technical, maybe know some psychological tricks and motivation, know how to give motivational speeches. But once you become this expert, you sometimes may be a bit detached of the struggles of junior people in whatever path they are going through. So in this sense, I guess people who are in the middle of their journey, they're not juniors already, and they don't consider themselves as seniors and experts. Still, they already deliver value to those junior developers, let's say, because they remember more clearly the struggles they were going through and will be able to help more quickly or deliver the right information, as opposed to seniors and experts who may be too advanced in their career to remember what it was to be a junior.
That's a nice observation. There is some question in the chat. We talk about mentorship, but do you know if some of these networks offer one-on-one coaching to people? Because it's also a powerful resource to young women in software development.
So typically, the mentorship programs that I was part of on the mentor side, they would be one-on-one mentorship with periodic meetings. And also, there would be organized group calls with delivering some educational information, which we then can discuss on one-on-one, or if typically mentorship programs would have some project in the end. So we would spend this one-on-one meetings to prepare for the project. Let me switch my camera. Okay. Sorry. I guess.
Yeah. There is one more question to you, Anna. How can one start their journey to open source for a newbie like myself?
Once again, we might overthink the amount of the expertise we need to have to start something. But contribution to open source can have different forms, and even fixing some typos in the documentation or creating the documentation is already a great impact to the open source. Another way to contribute is to open issues, because authors of the open source project may not always be able to test it fully. And once you inform them about the issue and provide a detailed description on what happened and what issues you faced, maybe give some tips about special cases, that is already a great help. And once you feel comfortable, a lot of open source projects that have a huge code base would have a list of issues with labels like good for first-time contributors or minor issues, which you can hunt for and pick if you feel uncomfortable contributing at a greater scale first.
I have one last question to you, Anna. What is that you like about Flutter?
Ooh, I can talk a lot about Flutter. I would say the things that immediately caught my attention and made me fall in love with Flutter was development experience. I mean, you can pretty quickly start developing applications, and thanks to the power of hot reload, meaning you make a change, you immediately see it on the device without rerunning the application and having this long cycle. That was one of the most powerful aspects of it. In addition to it being simple, beginner-friendly, in addition to the fact that you get to build for 6 different platforms as of now from a single code base. And once again, Flutter community is a great contributor to the overall impression of the Flutter framework and the ecosystem.
Thank you, Anna, for sharing all those insights with our community. And I would also like to encourage our community to connect with you. Hope you don't mind. Outside of the setting of this event, Anna can be a good resource for you, especially if you're looking for a mentorship program, or maybe you just speak with her so that you can level up your career. Thank you very much, and don't leave us. I'm talking about the audience now, Anna. Don't leave us, please, because we will only have 2 minutes break, and we will start with our next speaker.
Thank you.
Hello again. So we go ahead with our agenda and our Women in Tech Day. The next session is going to be a little bit different compared to the other ones. It's not going to be a talk. We are going to have a conversation with a young and inspirational lady. My next guest is Leah Fragner. So welcome, Leah.
I was muted, sorry. Hi.
Yeah, this happened to me already several times, but I'm very happy to have you as a guest, Leah. So how are you today?
I'm doing fine, a bit nervous. I was just at work before, so yeah.
You don't have to be nervous. You are amazing, and also people like people. So just feel comfortable. It's
Thanks.
our community. It's your place. You are worth it to be here. So just very quickly, Leah is. We will be entering into a dialogue with Leah, and she will be sharing her personal story about how she landed a career in software development, what she enjoys doing, and things like that. Whatever she wants to share with us. She is a software developer with Beko, and we are good to start with. Maybe you can share a little bit more about yourself, Leah. How did you get into software development in general? I know that your story is quite interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was an interesting start, to be honest, because I had no clue in 8th grade where I should start, where I should go to, what my journey would be in the future, what I would work at for. Whatever. And then my school went to the, I'm not sure how it's translated, I think Austrian Public Employment Center, something like this. And there were many different schools presented to us, and someone told me, hey, it doesn't seem like you have a specific interest. Why don't you try an IT school? So they told me what types of school there were, and one of them had an open day just a few days after. So my dad was really glad that I had found something that interested me and something I was really passionate about even before starting. And that's how I got into the school and had 6 years of education there in a technical college nearby.
Well, the role of the technical schools, the role of the school in general seems to be kind of important when it comes to attracting women to tech. What were some of the challenges that you have encountered so far, Leah? I mean, what was encouraging or discouraging when it comes to working in tech?
Well, one thing, it was a 5-year education plan and I was 6 years there. So, of course, I had some trouble learning. I even sucked in software development. It was one of my problem subjects. One reason was the debug itself. It was kind of difficult dealing with it because you still had to learn. You didn't even know what exactly the problems were. So always seeing, yeah, you get this error and this exception was kind of hitting my self-confidence. And always bugs and errors were the worst enemy of mine. Also a bit GitHub, but that's another story.
Yeah. Who is your best teacher so far?
My best teacher, I'm really not sure because I'd say 4 people come to my mind. For one, my homeroom teachers, they were my teachers in software development and database development. And they really tried their best to motivate us, to get us to maybe learn a bit more than we thought we needed. And on the other hand, my father and my grandmother, who tried to stick with me with studying, and my dad even tried to explain programming to me, even though he is not a programmer.
Wow, you really got the support from your family, which is really
Yes.
great. Yeah. How we have a lot of young professionals struggling to find their first job. How did you land yours? Or maybe how your current job found you, whatever the situation is.
Well, it's a funny story. At a highway near my place where we drove along maybe every week, at least once a month. There is a billboard, And on the billboard, I could see the logo of Pico. And it really looked colorful to me and got my attention every time we drove by. So at all the job fairs where Pico was and where I was, because our school had an own job fair every year, except for during Corona, but yeah. And also at networking events where Pico was, I saw the logo, so I remembered, and then I thought, yeah, I should go talk to them. And the people were really nice. So when I graduated, I thought, why not apply there? So they found me more like I found them.
It's funny of a coincidence. What type of employer is Pico? What actually impressed you with them?
Well, I'm a person who likes to think in colors. If something's boring, it's gray. If I'm annoyed, I'm seeing red. So one thing I really liked is the social media and the website because it's really colorful. So it was visually pleasing to me. But something I also like is the independence you have as a big employee because you usually work with clients at the client side. So you don't really hear a lot from your manager only if he tries to check with you or something. You don't see him on a daily basis. So you usually check your mail every day, every week, hopefully. And yeah, you work a lot with the client, and if you work here at the site, then you see them more.
So you started your career with a company, and you basically don't see your company that much because you are sent on the client side. How do you manage to establish a relationship between both your employer and your client, who is kind of an employer for you?
Well, networking in general and trying to have connections is something we learned in school where we had classes. Courses, that's the word. And I also was interested in human behavior, and so I studied it in free time. So I'd say I didn't have as much trouble keeping up with my colleagues than other people would. And I don't know, I believe it's just not as hard for me as for other people who are much more shy than I am to, for one, have a connection with the colleagues at the client, and on the other side, have a connection with the colleagues at Big. But I also have colleagues at the site with me, two other guys in this case. And every now and then, when we meet up with our manager, we also talk to each other, but we don't work on the same floor even, so I don't hear a lot from them.
Can you share a little bit of how your working day looks like? What is that you enjoy the most?
Well, my work day is rather flexible. I can start when I want, but I should come in before 9, and I can end when I want. So
Here, I'm just picking up my water, sorry.
that's fine. You should stay hydrated. So, well, I first check my mail if there's something important, if there's an event coming in. Like, for example, I think this week Biku will go to a go-kart track and drive little go-karts. That's really cool, I think. And they also had gaming tournaments, so I always check my mail to see if there's something new. Then I check whether or not there are new projects incoming or new tasks, like someone found an issue that maybe I would have to look at and correct with a colleague of mine because I'm still rather new to the language I'm using there. And during the day, I have a lunch break and a tea break because I don't like coffee very much. And then I go home.
I like it, the way you said it. How about your current team? Because the topic is diversity, I will have to ask this question, but from a diversity standpoint, how do you work together? How does it look like, the team from diversity standpoint? And is there anything special that your manager or your client is doing in order to make sure that everyone is included, no matter the person?
Well, from a diversity standpoint itself, I think We are primarily speaking German in the company because the code we were writing is written in German because it's rather old code. We even have assembler code in use, I'll say. There are, I think, the most diverse aspect about the team I'm working in. It's 2 teams summarized in one. Is the age difference. We have me as the youngest at 20. Then there are some people after me, and then in between until I really didn't ask them how old they are. I just know that they'll retire soon. 2 people. Yeah.
Okay. So how does it work for you? What's the advantage of working with people from different ages?
The advantage is they really know the code well. I'm programming in PL1. It's a rather old programming language, much older than I am. And of course, when I tried to Google things in that language, I almost found nothing. I think a school taught us is you learn how to Google things, how you get to your information, because you don't need to know everything in your head. But with PL1, it's something different because you don't really have the internet. There aren't a lot of people who know that language. So when I don't know something about the language itself, I ask my colleagues or check a floppy disk they have on which they had the studying programs and little examples. I think they also have a Hello World, which it really excited me because every programming language has at least one tutorial where you have a Hello World example. So it's really great to work with the people because if I don't know something, I can ask them and they're really nice. They know much more than I, and I'm glad that I can learn from them.
You work on a diverse team comprised with people from your company, Biko, but also people from your client side. Is it visible who is from where? If I come to your office and I don't know who is sitting there, am I going to be able to say, hey, this person is working at Biko and the other one is at the client?
The only thing you'd know, you'd recognize me by being from Biko is my teacup. But otherwise,
so you didn't offer anything to your colleagues?
Can you please repeat yourself? I didn't understand.
Yeah, I'm just asking, didn't you offer any mugs to your colleagues from the client side, like with the logo?
No, this is mine. This is great. I want to keep it. No, but I don't have a Biko colleague in my room because my colleagues are both on the 4th floor and I'm on the 1st floor. It's a tinier section where we sit in, and my colleagues are on the upper floor where a lot of people sit on. Yeah.
Was it smooth? How is the integration of your persona? How did it happen when you joined your client?
Well, my manager accompanied me because I do tend to get really nervous. So he said, "Yeah, I'll go with you. You don't have to go alone." And one of my colleagues got me because the manager of my client, so my manager at my client, wasn't there when I headed over. So someone had to get me, and they were really confused because my team tends to snoop a little and check if there are new people coming in, but they didn't know that I'd come in. And they were really nice. They tried to explain everything to me, and I think the least smooth thing there was when I started out in the first 2 weeks was the fact that my monitor was struggling with the cable and always had little, I think, blackouts, and it was really annoying for the eyes. That's the worst thing I'd say from the first 2 weeks I had. But otherwise, I was treated as an equal.
Okay. Have you ever struggled with self-confidence in a male-dominant field? How do you combat bias on a daily basis if this is something that is happening to you?
I'd say compared to when I was in school, it's happening a lot less because my team is rather equal on a gender basis. We have around the same amount of men as women. And in school, I was, from the 6 years I was there, I was 3.5 years the only girl in my class. So it was pretty hard because the boys, they understood each other on almost a different level, it seemed to me. I just felt like the odd one out. So my self-confidence tagged a little, and that's where my friends and my family were really a great help, because I don't know if I would have continued the school otherwise.
What is the role of the teachers when it comes to gender bias or inclusion when it comes to women at school?
I don't think it's just my school like this, but my school had to put a lot of focus into it. When I started out, we had around 5% girls with 1,400 people, I'd say, 1,400 students. So we have a diversity teacher who was especially there when the girls had problems, if they were getting bullied or if there was discrimination against them. So there was this one teacher, maybe the IT people saw, because we have 4 branches, not just IT, but also working with electronics and machines and a mix of all of them. So the teachers tried their best, but if there was a teacher discriminating one of the girls, because I think there was a case, the headmaster and the teachers tried to step in and, of course, try to solve the problem.
You are revealing a piece of information that is really something interesting for us to hear. I always thought that it's not that obvious, this discrimination, but you also said that it's coming out from teachers as well. And yeah, I mean, I also didn't know that there is a dedicated person who would deal with diversity issues at schools, which I really find great.
Well, I'm glad that it didn't happen to me, to be honest, because the teachers I had were all really great and also tried to empower the women. When I had a test, and the first 3 people with the highest points were just girls, the teacher even celebrated a little because she also is a woman.
How can the tech industry be more inclusive to women, starting with school, maybe with family, and then at work? And why do you think there are still so few women in the field?
I'd say one reason there are not enough women in the field is that some girls are just scared to start into IT because they see all those boys and think, okay, and where are the girls? Another reason might be that, but that can also apply to other genders, that you don't really know where to start, that you don't know what programming languages would be the best, which wasn't my case, because we had a curriculum and we learned C, C#, and Java. So I didn't have to pick. But I also think that it's not directly a problem just for inside tech, but also a social problem and a problem caused by media. So
can you elaborate a little bit more on this?
One thing I remember when I was little is that the cartoons had hackers that were boys that seemed cool or that seemed really gross. And I rarely saw a woman that was technical. And if there was a woman that was technical, then it was more pleasing for the boys than for the girls. I'll leave it at that. And when thinking about social problems, in general, the STEM majors are primarily boys. Hundreds of years ago, math was only available to boys, and only girls started to get into it slower. And I think that's also because of how we raise the children with binary stereotypes. When you go into a shop and see different owls, and you see the pinkish owls for the girls and the bluish owls for the boys, you would usually find a science kit with the boys. But what says that girls can't also be interested in science? Why do they have to go into the boys' owl to get it if they could also want the pink science kit?
Well, that's a message to a message to all the parents out there. Whenever you go to birthdays and buy presents to your that is going to come from your friend to another person. If it is a girl, feel free to buy them cars, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, and I echo you here because I think that our society has a lot of prejudices when it comes to presents, when it comes to colors that one is supposed to wear, etc. And yeah, it's at the end about the role models, and our parents are our best role models. If they teach us that cars are for boys and dolls are for girls, we will kind of sooner or later be into this thinking. To get a better feeling of your work, Leia, can you also give us some insights regarding the projects you're working on?
Well, I've worked with the client for 5 months now, and there are, of course, the issues and what is it called, incidents, when someone says, okay, there's a problem, please deal with it. We get these and work on it as fast or as our schedule allows. Then we have small scale projects like wishes from our clients' clients. This is really fun to say.
It becomes more and more complicated. Hope that you're well
Yeah,
integrated into the whole thing.
I'm working for a client that works for 3 different banks. So we're more dealing with money, but not exactly. If we were to give someone more money, that would be really bad and we'd get fired and stuff. So they really check what we do, and if we were in that area where we could create chaos. So if they wish to have new programs or new functions, then that'd be a smaller project in comparison to something I've worked a little bit at, but I don't know if I'll work at it again. Depends on whether the project manager or not thinks there's a task suited for me. A migration from one bank to our bank. So getting the data and migrating it to the system we care for, and yeah, that's the biggest project that's dealing with all the other teams as well, because we all have to work together on this.
And when you don't know something, what do you do in this case?
Well, if it's about the programming language itself, then I ask someone or I check the floppy disk. If it's about a program, where a program is, then I'll either check documentation, or I can guess what it's called by the naming conventions we have, or I'll ask someone. And that's in 90% of the cases that I'll still have to ask someone after I checked. But if it's something from the organization, like when I get a new contract or stuff, then I can also just write a mail and get my answers this way from Biko. And we get a PDF every now and then that explains the contracts to us if it's something more complicated, which I'm really glad about.
What is the tech stack that you're using? Is it the same that you studied at school, or is it something new?
It's something completely new. In school, I learned C Sharp, and Java for programming. And I learned SQL as well as different types to display programs, as well as Agile project management. And at my client, I work with the language PL1. As well, I use Eclipse-based programming tool, and in school we had IntelliJ. And we also have 2 different database programs with whom we can just look into it, write queries and so. And the other is for manipulating the data. which is confusing at times because oftentimes I don't know where I should look at when I'm looking for data.
What is that you like about the whole mix that you described?
One thing I'm really fascinated about even is for banks, it's really necessary that they get all their calculations done in time, and they have to do some every night, some every end of the month, and some every year, which is where the most problems will probably show up. So if they were to write the code in Java, which they have in PL1 and assembler, they would take 2 days for what they can do in 2-3 hours, maybe a night. I haven't looked at a night shift, I'd say. I don't know the real word for it. There are some people at the end of the month and at the end of the year that stay a bit longer, even during semester, and make sure that the programs are running smoothly, or to troubleshoot if troubleshooting is necessary. So that's
What
something that
does
really interests me.
positively or negatively? Is it a positive impression that you got from this, or?
Yes, it is, because it's still an old programming language, but it still has so many uses. There are companies programming for what is it called? Not airplanes. I don't know. There are many different cases where you could use these, where time is critical for the calculations, especially there. And in, I believe, America, they're looking for people who speak these old languages. PL1 is the daughter language of Fortran, I believe, created by IBM. So when you know PL1, I believe you can also look a bit at Fortran and know what it says.
What does your free time look like, Leah? You're a young person, 20-year-old. You mentioned home several times. So would you like to share this with our community?
One thing I've spent the last few weeks on is Dungeons and Dragons, a hobby of mine, because I'm a dungeon master and I'm prepping for 2 different parties, for 2 different groups of people. And the one group gets an adventure where they have to go into a thieves' and into a huge city of thieves and get information about the local tyrant. And the other group will get an adventure about the town that meets the downfall every day, again and again, the same way. So I have to do a lot of asset drawing because it's my own creation in this case, with some parts stolen from pop culture media. And I also have to create people, to create some fights, and look at what kind of enemies I'd use. So yeah, that's what my free time looked like the last few days.
Okay, looks good. Is there any advice that you would like to pass on younger women or young professionals in general who start their career in tech?
Well, first I'd say don't let the debugger get you down, because as mean as it might seem, it's one of the most important tools for a programmer when programming. And I had to learn it the hard way that even when you know how to program magically, you still have to practice, because programming is just a combination of tools you use to solve a puzzle. And this, I'd also say to every girl that listens in, maybe by chance, maybe intentionally, to just check out everything if you're not sure if you want to stay on the path you've chosen for your career. And maybe you'll find something better. I didn't expect to be a programmer. In my first year, I even thought, wait, no way. So
No way, there is way.
yes, I'm so surprised that I'm a programmer today, because my grades really shot up when
Oh, that's lovely. I'm so surprised that I'm a programmer. That's really lovely, Leah.
But it works. It works, and it's really fun. It's like solving a lot of riddles to me.
Anything that I didn't ask and you want to say just to close this session?
I really want to say that there are also really good things about learning programming. Like, for example, Hello World. Perfect example when you're looking for tutorials, because some of the tutorials are really outdated. And also, programming is fun. You do also earn a little bit of more money than you earn in other professions. And no matter how your employer would look like, if you're having fun and if you get along with your people, it will be the perfect job. I hope it didn't sound too weird.
You can be as you are.
And no, I'm freestyling. I'm not used to speaking English.
You're doing great. And thank you, Leia, for this kind of interview. I will give you a little bit of a break because you will also join our panel discussion that will start in exactly 10 minutes.
Okay.
Don't, to our community, just make sure that you come on time because we have really selected amazing panelists for you, and they really promised us to only speak truth about diversity. It's not going to be about best practices, it's going to be about best practices. So we are looking for you back in 10 minutes. Welcome back. I'm very happy to close this live day with a roundtable. I do believe that it will be a great roundup of the previous talks around diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Today, we have 4 amazing panelists with us, and they will share their thoughts around diversity, inclusion, and belonging with no filter. At least this is the promise that we got from them. So I'd like to introduce you to Stephanie Jacobi, who is a co-founder of Sec4Deaf Conference. She is also a moderator and speaker. We also have with us Thomas Paminger, who is co-founder and CPO of WeAreDevelopers. I think that it's the first time we have someone from WeAreDevelopers speaking during our live events. Then we have a great young professional, Leah Fragner. She is a software developer at BECO, and I'm very happy to have someone from her generation attending this panel. I do believe that it's important to hear their thoughts on the topic. We also have Christiana Protenau. She is part of the leadership team of Global Women in Tech, and she's also a consultant. Welcome, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to be with you today, and I'll start directly. I'll kick it off with asking each of you to say a few words about themselves, who you are, and what do you do, so that our audience can know more about you. Would you like to kick it off, Stephanie?
Hi, welcome everyone. Nice being here. Yes, my name is Stephanie Jacobi. I work at the same company for nearly 13 years now. So at SBA Research, we're a research center for information security, and I studied software engineering, but I coded for just a couple of years, and then I changed a little bit into research. Something about myself. Yes, I'm the co-founder of Sec4Deaf. There's a nice story I would like to share here as well. Like we could do the security track on one of the last, or I think it was the last WeAreDevelopers conference in Vienna. So we did the security track there. That was kind of the kickoff of the idea founding the Sec4Deaf conference. So I'm very, very happy to be here today and honored. And I do a lot of things surrounding security awareness for kids and also for women. And we are a quite diverse company. So that's from my side.
Amazing. Thank you, Stephanie. Christiana, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Christiana Proteanu. I work as a fractional COO and operations consultant for tech companies. I've been working for over 14 years now with remote and distributed teams. And when I say distributed, it means like all over the world, on all continents. So I have a lot of experience working with very diverse teams. I normally work with founders and entrepreneurs, and I help them build profitable and scalable companies in tech, biotech, digital. And since 2018, I'm also part of Global Women in Tech, a nonprofit supporting women who want to build a career in tech.
Thank you. Leah?
I don't think I'd have to introduce myself again. Well, my name is Leah. I'm 20 years old. I've just graduated from a technical college, and I think I've been working for 5 months now for a client through BECO. Yeah, there's not a lot I could talk about at the moment.
Thank you, Leah. It's really great to have you here. Tom, you're the last one.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So, yeah, my name is Thomas. I'm co-founder and chief product officer at WeAreDevelopers, responsible for product strategy, development, and the roadmap of our product portfolio. About my education, maybe I hold a Master's of Science degree in architecture, actually, which is supplemented by an education in software engineering from a secondary vocational school. I founded my first company like already 23 years ago, working in various fields such as software development, product and design strategy, cloud architecture, UI, UX, mostly for international companies and clients. And I always worked with teams around the globe, across time zones. I enjoyed that very much, and hiring and trying to build positive workspace culture was always like playing an important role during this whole journey. So yeah, I think that's it about
Thank
me.
you. Thank you, Tom. Just to put the foundation of, for this conversation, I would also like to ask each of you to let us know, what is diversity, inclusion, and belonging for you? What does it mean? Because it can be anything. And as I said, we are not going to focus on the best practices here. It's going to be test practices. So I guess that this has a different meaning for each and everyone. So if you would like to start sharing this with our audience, that would be really, really great. And it will also help them understand the other insights that you're going to give them going forward. I mean, if anyone wants to start, you just feel free to go ahead and speak.
Maybe I can start on this one. So to me, diversity means that basically there are no restrictions or filters in place when building teams. And this goes like beyond the obvious, like gender, religion. It goes also into background, education, personal views, and opinions. When I talk about inclusion, I think about including everyone in conversation, encouraging participation, respecting and also valuing opinion of everybody, regardless of their diverse background. I think probably the more, let's say, difficult one, when I think about it, is the belonging. Like, how do we create a sense of belonging? And here I think we need to align the vision of the company with a really strong and transparent company culture. So belonging is at the intersection of the company culture and the company vision, in my opinion.
Thank you, Christiana. Leah, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'll just go ahead. I think that diversity inclusion, I'll just try to give a picture. Those are what keep us out of gray, monotonous, same thing bubbles. Because when you're in a team with 7 times the same person as you, the solutions you get for a problem will probably all be the same, and you might not think about things that if there was at least one different thinking person at this team, you'd forget about it if there was no one pointing it out. Because I think I had an example. Yeah. I was wedding shopping some time ago for not for mine for a friend of mine, and we looked for presents. And the friend of mine thought about, okay, how should we package it? Will it stay safe inside the box? And I thought about, okay, would there be any implicit message we'd also accidentally give by giving this present, like for example, a teddy bear or something? So it's really important to have many different people with many different tools and different perspectives on a thing in a team to get the best solution you could create, especially in coding.
That's a lovely example, Leah. Thank you. Tom, do you want to go next?
Sure. So for me, just an example popped to my mind. So maybe I tell you a little story. When I was like 8 or so, I was it was afternoon after school, and I was playing with my friends outside, and at some point they said like, yeah, they have to go to football training, and they said like, yeah, just join us, come with us. And so yeah, we went to the sports ground there, and it was like 2 kilometer walk, and there was the trainer, and I was a little scared, but I asked like, yeah, can I join? And I already overheard like some other guys saying like, yeah, he doesn't even have like football shoes, he has like normal street shoes, like yeah, it would not work and all. And the trainer said, yeah, you're a player, you play this position. And to the others he said like, yeah, watch and try to keep up with him. So this was like one thing where I like this decision from the trainer, like, yeah, you are a player, you know. So this made this kind of inclusion feeling, like kind of feeling like being part of this team. Now, it was very strong feeling back then, and I think this is what inclusion means, like that there is differences, whatever differences there are. Of course, there's differences amongst all people, like gender, ethnicity, religion, but in this case, it was just shoes. But still, this is what inclusion means to me: to have like a safe space for every individual to contribute. And I think belonging is something that maybe comes afterwards, because belonging is, I think, a very strong feeling, like where you feel seen, heard, and valued and respected. So yeah, that would be my definitions.
Yeah, feels like belonging comes as an emotional outcome of the first two. Yeah. Stephanie, how about you? What is it for you, diversity, inclusion, and belonging?
I mean, it was said before from the others as well. Like diversity, it's important to have when you work in a team or in a company, it's important to have different opinions from different people, or opinions from different people with different backgrounds. And it can be the culture or the religion. It can be also the age. What I experienced when you have in a dev team, you have a lot of young developers, then you always have the peaks, the good parts and the bad, but it's always peak. It's enormous, great and awesome. And when something doesn't work, it's like down in the basement. No, we can I don't know, keep the project. Nothing is working anymore. And there, for example, I think you need the more experienced people in a project, which are kind of leveling these peaks out a little bit, because they know how it works. They know that there's always something very good happening and there's always something bad, but it's going further. So the project is evolving, the software is evolving, and you just have to stick to it. But the peaks are getting a little bit less. So that's what it's a picture I have in my mind. And it's also, you need, it doesn't matter if it's the gender. What I don't really like is when you talk about diversity in IT, most of the people think about, we need more women, but that's not only diversity. We need more different people in a company, in a project, and gender is just one aspect of being different. And the inclusion, yeah, belonging, I can say a little bit more, because I think belonging is when you are in a company or in a project team where you can be as you are, you can be creative, you can like in German say like can aufblühen, you can bring something more to the table. You don't have to hide who you are or what your opinions are. So that's belonging for me, and you can be crazy, and that's okay as well.
Yeah. Even the picture that you brought with the good and the bad is also a certain sort of diversity. But why is it so important? I mean, is it something trendy that people start talking about diversity around this day? Why is diversity important for you, Stephanie? And how do you build a culture of inclusion in your organization, or how have you seen it built in other organizations?
Yes, I mean, I had some internships in other companies, but I'm full employed at that company since 13 years, so I don't have that much to compare to. But I think when it's diversity, and we are a research center, coming to diversity part, we are a research center, and I also work at University of Vienna, so we are in that research bubble, and it's quite international there, because you always have some exchange students or researchers from other countries, from other universities. So the religion and the like the language part is always different, it's always changing. So we are here quite diverse team, and I think diversity is more common in the research area than in other companies. And what was the second question? Sorry.
I mean, how have you built culture of inclusion when it comes to your teams, or you have probably seen this outside of your own team? How is it happening, and why is it important? I mean, I agree with you that adding women to the team is not a reason. I mean, it does not bring to you. You have to do it for something else, not because someone is a woman, or not because of someone has different sexual orientation, or he speaks a different language. There is something behind this that makes it important.
I think it starts with the job interview. You kind of get the feeling if the person would be a good addition to the other employees and your colleagues at work. I don't want to say if it fits, because fits also mean that you can't be yourself. You have to change a little bit to fit in. But I mean, you get the feeling if the person would be a good additional employee in your company or not. And what I realized, or what I saw at SPA, is that there are people we have a kind of unique culture, and a very open-minded culture. And sometimes you have new employees, you have some colleagues which are not that open-minded, for example, and inclusion doesn't quite work that well. So what I realized, or what I saw, is that if the people doesn't fit to your culture and the company, they don't stay that long. So you have a good, quite core of people who live the culture and give the culture, or live it. And if the people they don't like the way we are, or the way the culture is, they don't stay that long. And I think the culture, to have a good open-minded culture, is very important.
What I just said, because when I was preparing for this roundtable, I spoke with a little bit more people than the current setup. And there was one person who said something similar to what you just said. He said, I hate talking about culture fit. I like talking about culture adds. So it is important that the person feel comfortable, but using the word fit is maybe something we should rather think of, making the culture more inclusive versus more fitting into the person. And Christiana, I know that you have worked on building a lot of teams outside of your organizations for different clients, for different companies. How is it for you? I mean, what was important for your clients when they said, okay, we just need this team to be diverse? Or does it happening like this? I mean, do you get a request, hey, I need a diverse team, or it just happens because of something else is available?
So normally I don't get requests like this, but I'm fortunate to work with teams and companies who understand that diversity is actually good for business. And what I mean by this is that when you have a diverse team from all points of view, you get a lot of, let's say, multiple solutions to a problem, because you have a multitude of viewpoints and opinions, backgrounds, experience in the team. So this is basically benefiting the company without being a KPI, like we need to have 50% women, 50% men. No, it doesn't happen like that. Also, it's a huge opportunity for everyone in those teams to learn from each other, because you meet people with different backgrounds, different experience than your own. And in the end, the beneficiary of this collective growth and development opportunity is both the employees and also the company. This has been my experience. Um, and I think Stephanie also mentioned that it actually starts from the recruiting process, from the way you phrase a job ad, but also being flexible and being willing to adapt and to adjust a role to fit talent, rather than the other way around, trying to fit someone in a specific role.
Yeah, nice and interesting. So it happens naturally. I mean, you don't have to do anything specific in order to. You just need to be open and to listen to the market and to be welcoming towards the talent.
Yeah, exactly. This has been my experience. And again, I didn't get any specific requests about creating diverse teams. Um, but yeah, in a way, I work in the space of like the companies I've been working with since 2009. They had remote or hybrid teams, and they were really open to welcome team members from all over the world, from diverse backgrounds. And this multiculturalism was really embraced in these companies. So automatically, those teams were really diverse without, I know, measuring this in a very specific way.
Yeah, so diversity, in order for diversity to happen, you have to not to be restrictive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Leah, we spoke about it during our previous session, but I'm also curious. I mean, you don't have experience with building teams, but you have also definitely experienced the diversity and the inclusion. What is your manager doing in this respect, or what is some of the practices that are available at BICO or at your client place when it comes to inclusion? You work with people from, you mentioned during the previous session, different age, but also they do not belong to the same company. How is it happening to whole fit together?
That's really difficult for me to answer, to be honest. One thing I have to add is that, well, diversity and cultural fit, from what I've noticed, are really not that good at working together. But one thing that I've noticed is that BQ is placing diversity as one of its core values, because everyone comes with a set of tools and can bring a good set of tools to the client. So they focus more on supporting the schools around, so they can nurture talent, I'd say. And well, diversity in my team, I said that it's age-wise and we're really balanced about gender, but I'm not really sure whether or not our manager has to do anything. We are always the same team, so we don't have to exchange people around. We have meetings with other teams, but there's usually not someone coming in for some months and then going away again.
Is there anything that your manager or your client is doing so that everyone is feeling included or heard, or is there a procedure maybe that is available at your company that makes it happen?
Not really. I mean, when I have a meeting with my manager at Biko, we're four people usually, and he always talks to every one of us, checks in with us, and he maybe remembers something we've said before, but I'm really not sure, to be honest. If there's any
That's
special
absolutely okay. That's absolutely okay. No worries. Okay, thank you, Leah. And Tom, I know a little bit your team, but I am really happy that you will be able to say something to our community, because you really managed to build a very diverse team. So what happened? How did it happen? And how do you make sure that they all speak, they all are heard, and they all contribute and feel like this. Because as managers, I know that we do not always manage the reality, but we manage other people's perceptions about the reality. So tell us a little bit more about your team and how you manage diversity on it.
Yeah, so on my team, or in the innovation lab, we're 7 people, so it's not a really big team. But the gender split is 50-50, for example. But coming back to the question, like, I think first of all, I think I for myself, I believe, like what Christiana also said, that diverse teams improve your business. So I also believe in that, and I think that is true, because the diversity, you can learn from a more diverse collection of colleagues. This already is something that will help grow the team and will help also to prevent group thinking. Because if everybody thinks alike, then yeah, you have like a tunnel vision, and maybe you lose some novel thinking here. Also think of your clients that you have. Probably your team is already diverse, but then look at all the users of your product. They're even more diverse, you know. So it's definitely important. And I think there's just some simple stuff, like if you, for example, for me, it was never a point to exclude not German-speaking people. So I always wanted to have an English-speaking team, and we onboard English-speaking people, either they're native or non-native, which opens up the hiring pipeline extremely. And I think that the diversity here will extend your search and include really all qualified candidates, and not, in particular, those who maybe traditionally have not access to your hiring pipeline. So, or also accepting remote people, not just the people that live right around the corner. Stuff like that. That is what you can do as a manager, or as one of the responsible persons to building these teams. These are already, I think, very obvious and simple steps to broaden your hiring pipeline. But and here is also like the diversity is not like it gives you more qualified people. Diversity is not about like hiring less qualified people. It's not about like ticking check boxes because we need more women on the team. So this is not what it is. I think there is sometimes a misunderstanding. It's not just metrics here. Also, simple stuff like in job descriptions, avoid overly gendered language and stuff like that. So I think there is a lot of simple things that maybe also then maybe even subconscious are recognized by the applicants, and maybe they feel a bit more welcome because of all of this in this kind of setting. So, yeah.
One of the things that popped up when I was onto the topic was around inclusion as a skill. And with all the discussions that I had, it was strange to me that also men feel excluded when it comes to a leadership team, for example. And when I was discussing with people, they said normally that, I mean, people sometimes don't realize that they're not inclusive. They think that just because they're good managers or good people, or they're there and listen, it's enough. But it's not. You can still feel excluded, apparently. How do you train this skill? Do you train it consciously or unconsciously? And have you ever thought about the importance of training the soft skills with the same rigor that we are training the technical skills, for example? I don't know who wants to start, but whoever feels.
I think you have to train it to stay, because I think sometimes it's also you realize that you're not inclusive when you start talking about it. like you said, you think you are, but then you have a discussion at a coffee break or by having a coffee, and then you realize that you're not that inclusive as you think or as you thought you are. So I think it has to be trained. You have to talk about it. I mean, and you have to somehow praise the training that the people want to do it or want to go there. And no, I forgot all. That's bad. Yes, I think talking is the best way to start, to really like have a discussion when it, for example, when it comes to using gender neutral language. That's a good point to start, because everyone has an opinion on that. Or using in German the .en to make it more female. Everyone has an opinion about that. And I think that's a good start to talk about it. Are we inclusive? How inclusive are we? Who doesn't feel included? But I think you have to train it, and you have to talk about it to realize how inclusive or not inclusive you are. And not, like Thomas said, not checking something, like checking, I have to be inclusive, so I have to check these boxes. That's not thinking about it. It's just like doing what someone else thought it's right. But I think it's a skill you gain by interaction and training.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you, Stephanie. I got a little bit distracted because my battery is down. I will now switch my computer and the cable of my computer and change the microphone. But while I'm doing it, I think that the discussion doesn't have to stop. Maybe Christiana, you want to go ahead and share your opinion on this?
Yes, sure. So in my case, I actually have a process-driven approach. I want to make sure I'm inclusive, but I want to do it in a conscious way. So some of the practices that I do to make sure that everyone is included in the teams I work with is really create, for example, meeting agendas which are inclusive, which means that I request input from everyone on the team. But by giving them some notice to prepare. So I don't want to put people on the spot during those meetings, but I want to make sure that everyone participates, or the relevant people participate with input. So then I tell them a bit before to prepare some points or their feedback on what's being discussed. Also, I think by celebrating diversity and showing respect for each of the team members' beliefs, and holding space for them to be able to do their practices, whatever that means for them. Also, by having regular feedback sessions or surveys, and sometimes they have to be anonymous for the team members to feel safe to share their point of view. So that's okay, because the idea is to gather that feedback and then implement it in a way that like everyone's input is considered, and then later on iterate, like ask again for feedback and implement what can be implemented. Another point which I wanted to make, I think it's really important to set correct expectations. So I like to ask for feedback from the team members and implement what is possible. But at the same time, I also want to be really transparent with them and tell them that if they share their feedback, some of it may be, we may be able to implement it as a team, as a company, but not everything. So sharing the feedback doesn't mean automatically that it will also be implemented. But I want to hear everyone's point of view and make sure that they know they were heard.
Thank you, Christiana. Leah, have you thought about it? Like, I mean, you can answer or skip the question if you prefer, but I'm really happy to hear your opinion on the topic.
Well, about feedback gathering or in general, having a project team and getting everyone's opinion, that's something I do know better, because I do try my best to train my soft skills, because that was a focus of mine all the time. We also have, I study in my free time about how I can present myself better and stuff. And a thing that came to my mind just now was how my father get his feedback at his company, because he's an optimizer, and he tries to smooth some processes at the production site he works at. And one time he had an idea, because he doesn't focus on diversity but on getting everyone's opinion. So he said he would take some money, get some coins, and say, okay, everyone, let's have a small survey. You can either place your coin and give me your opinion, or you can go have a break and use your coin to get a Red Bull or something. And he didn't really care as much about the survey itself. It was something really simple, I believe. But he cared more about what people, what types of people want to bring the opinion, whether or not they just wanted to say, yeah, we're happy, we want to still share it, or okay, I have a problem, it's much more worth than that one energy drink I'd get out of it. So I think there are many creative ways to try to get everyone to say something, or to see who is not interested in giving an opinion.
Yeah, I like it when you give, it's the second time that you're giving an example with members of your family. I really love it. Thank you, Leah. Tom, do you think that you're inclusive, and have you ever been trained on inclusivity? I'm sorry to ask it directly, but I think that it's going to be interesting to hear your honest answer here. I'll ask your team afterwards.
If I'm inclusive, I'm trying to be, but I surely fail. So from time to time, everybody I think is biased, and objectivity is an illusion. So no, but yeah, yes, I try, but I'm not. I think maybe one note too, because I really have a real life experience with this pre-shared agenda that Christiana mentioned, that you share an agenda before you meet with people. This is one thing that I have seen works very well, especially with introvert people, because if you share the agenda beforehand, they can prepare and they are more likely to speak up in those meetings. And this is one very nice way when you have like a design grooming or whatever. If you pre-share it, I think the participation is way better, but especially also from more like introvert people. Regarding inclusion training, no, I'm not trained, only by life. But I would not say like, I think it would be probably a very good thing to do. By intuition, I would also not really trust my intuition, to be honest, because if you think of like, yeah, I'm intuitively inclusive, I'm not sure, because intuition is something like you see something and you judge it, and you don't do this conscious reasoning and reflection of like all of your thoughts, because you see somebody and then, oh, this guy reminds me of somebody I don't like or I like, and then you know already all the biases are running and you make a decision. And this is so intuition, I would not trust the intuition. I think active listening, talking carefully, this kind of stuff that you could do in a day-to-day like workspace environment, and I also often fail in this regard, but also pointing out and challenging stereotypes in conversation, for example, making also other people aware that maybe this is right, this is not right. Speak up, interrupt like biases where you feel, or I think talking is one of the things that already makes it sometimes awkward, because sometimes you want to address something, especially in this kind of sphere, and you want to be inclusive, but you don't address this because you don't know how to say it. Because maybe you don't know if like, can I say, I don't know, gay? Can I say gender fluid? Can I say brown, black? You know, sometimes we are scared to step on someone's toes, and then we don't even speak about things. And I think this is the first starting point when you start the conversation and invite other people also to talk about this kind of stuff. And yeah, and the obvious one, like avoiding cynicism and pointing out things that are not right, because if you don't do this, then this will happen, and it will happen again, and it will happen again. So yeah, that's what I
It's
think.
about including the person and not including the words. It reminds me of something that I recently read. Are you listening as a problem solver, or are you listening as a leader? So those who listen as problem solvers, they listen to the words and their meaning to them. So they don't take into consideration the person. Maybe he wants to say something else. Maybe he doesn't want to do the thing. But when listening to the words, we're listening to our own experience and our meaning, the meaning these words have to us. And we become a little bit less inclusive because we don't listen actively. They just take into consideration the words. What is what is missing in the tech industry so that it becomes more diverse? I mean, it's not. It's definitely not diverse, or at least the different diverse groups are not that visible. But what is missing?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Leah.
Well, I think it's not directly a problem in tech. There are some things you could try to solve, but I think it's also raising the next generations because when the students go out of school, they have the whole world. They have the world ahead of them, and I think to try to show them that tech is a really great place to be in would be great, because if you get the young people who are all different to go into tech, then it would solve a huge problem, but also showing them that tech isn't something to be afraid of, isn't something that's scary, let's say, considering how I looked at tech before I got into it. Yeah.
Thank you, Leah. Christina, do you want to go next? I
Um,
thought you wanted also.
Yes. So from my point of view, there are two aspects that I think are maybe missing or partially missing. One of them is flexibility in the hiring process. So focusing less on like arbitrary things like, I know, schedules, location, and more on value that can be delivered by talent. And then the second one is also related to hiring and is adjusting roles to fit great talent versus the other way around. And here I can tell you that some of the more successful hiring, hiring roles I did for the companies I work with happened when I went in with an open mind, and I found great talent, which maybe wasn't necessarily fitting to the job description. But then I went internally and discussed with the leadership team and found a way to integrate that person in the team, because it was someone who was diverse, right? So it was someone who was bringing something different to the table, and maybe different from what we expected or what we had in mind. So in several cases, we were able to like successfully hire a diverse person in the team by going in with an open mind.
Since we fail in the beginning of the funnel, already with the hiring process, we just don't consider the diverse talent. We don't give them the options to join us with all the restrictions that we are having.
Yes, correct. And I mean, of course, all job descriptions, they have some points there, right? So in a way, they're restrictive. But I think the person who is part of or the people who are part of the hiring process, they need to be flexible, to have a flexible mindset and see beyond those bullet lists of requirements.
Stephanie, I would also like to hear from you.
I think it's also missing awareness. Awareness for companies, for example, to or courage maybe, especially for companies, that they not afraid to look outside of the box, being not afraid to employing someone who is maybe not from Austria, or maybe is mainly working from home and being online and having a more spread team. Not being afraid to giving career changes a chance to switch careers and giving them a chance to prove themselves, because I think they're quite a huge benefit for a company, because they don't know just one domain, they know at least 2 domains, the one they were before and the one now. When we speak, for example, about software engineers, they know how to code. So I think it needs more courage and it needs more awareness.
Tom? Thank you, Stefan.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree to what has been said. I think that on the one hand, yeah, that we are more inviting, like more people and maybe different people. I think the thing is, like, once we have invited them, once they're in the funnel, like in the process of becoming members of the teams, then I think it's about like the onboarding. Do they feel welcomed? And is it can we also retain this kind of talent that we are now hiring, for example, especially if you start out and say like, okay, are we going in the direction of like remote work, or we accept English speaking people? So this also needs a change within the company, and making also those people feel welcome, and make those people that they are invited there, that they are sitting in the right meetings, that they are included then on the in the workspace. And I think this is the part that needs probably more work in general in the tech industry, not just like hiring for diversity, but making them feel welcome and appreciated in the workspace, and so that they can contribute.
You bring a good point, Tom, because I've read several studies, and they all say that for every woman, for example, appointed to a leadership position, director level or above, 2 others are leaving the company. So apparently, also there is work to be done around retention. And we are almost at time, but we will not be able to cover everything that we have prepared. Maybe other roundtables are needed for this. But just a final say, either a message that you would like to pass on, or what is the one thing that around diversity and inclusion that you want to see changed in the tech industry or in your organization? So maybe you start first, because you are the last one. You're usually the last one.
I start first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If,
Okay.
if you wish.
If I wish a final say, I would say like that. My final say is like, at some point you have to accept that you are sometimes biased, and you should be cautious in your actions and maybe reflect a little bit more. This is right now I'm talking to myself as well. And in general, I think I would see, or I'd like to see also more diversity in leadership positions.
Thank you. Stephanie, do you want to go next?
Oh, I was hoping I have a little bit more time.
You can wait, maybe
Yeah, me
you can
too.
switch with some.
What I would like to see, I would like to see more diversity in tech. I want to see more. I definitely want to see more girls and women in tech, I have to say. I mean, nevertheless, it's Women's Day today, because I know so many great women working in IT, and when you talk to them, they shine when they talk about their work, and that's what I would like to have for my kids and my daughter as well, to yes, to see the beauty in tech and work there. And I think we have to be, like as I said before, we have to be more open-minded.
Amazing. Thank you, Stephanie. Christiana?
So for me, one thing that I would like to see in all organizations, like tech organizations I work with, is respect for diversity in all its forms. And I think this translates into giving everyone in the organization equal chances to win at their role, regardless if that's like a junior position or at leadership level.
Thank you, Andrea. You have the final say for this panel. So use your creativity.
I'll try my best. Well, I'm not just talking for Pico, but also for my old school. They're already trying their best for creating an environment where everyone can feel comfortable and diversity is in the foreground. So I don't think there needs to be a change. I believe that my wish would be that they stay on this path they forge at the moment, because I think it's the right direction, at least in my opinion. Out of my view, I don't see everything, but what I've seen is a really bright future, if I want to say it really cringy and cheesy.
It's lovely. You said it the right way. Thank you, Leah, and thank you, everyone. I mean, I'm really sorry that this panel is over and this live day is over. What I want to remember from it is that really diversity is not only about the numbers. It's not about ticking numbers. It's more about how you want your people to feel every day when they come at work, and how you want to grow your business via diverse thinking. And yeah, thank you. And I know that we had a raffle that was announced. We are raffling out 5 tickets for the WeAreDevelopers World Congress. I will now announce the winners. I hope that I have them somewhere. Let me check. Okay. I do. Actually, the people who will get a free ticket for the WeAreDevelopers Congress in Berlin in July, the names are Roxana Borada, Ute Flier, gosh, I cannot read the name, Astiliano Alexandra, Link, Kamila Kowalska. People, anyways, I mean, names are strange. I'm not biased. I'm pretty sure that all those people that will get their tickets will reach out to them via email, because they have already left their emails. But for all the rest who did not manage to win a ticket, just make sure that you buy it after all. Book your flights, and we are waiting for you in Berlin. And I would like to thank you one more time to our partners and to everyone who made this event possible. Thank you. I'm waiting for Vincent to close it now.